SWAT box, what are you doing here? This is a combat zone. It's restricted. Ease off on your main thruster and head over to patreon.com/SWOCBC for episodes of our all-new series, Inside the Insider, where the gang explores articles from every single issue of the official Star Wars Insider fan magazine in order and get an even closer look at how Star Wars and its fandom have evolved over the years. New episodes with each public upload months earlier for patrons. Red 24, Red 30, follow me to patreon.com/SWOCBC for the latest episode of SWAT Box. Inside the Insider today. In target range. It's ahead. All ships jump to light speed.
The Star Wars Old Canon Book Club is made possible by contributions on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/SWOCBC for ad-free episodes, reading guides, movie and TV episode audio watch-alongs, and more. Today's Old Canon Fact of the Day comes from Star Wars, the new essential guide to characters, revised edition by Daniel Wallace, first published in April of 2002. When first asked to comment on Lando Calrissian for an unauthorized autobiography, Bob Artemis Drebel said of the gambler turned hero, "He's either a mind-controlling alien or a Jedi in disguise. It's his luck. No human in the galaxy has a right to be that lucky." Today's selection is Lando Calrissian and the Mindharp of Sharu, a novel by L. Neil Smith, first released on July 12, 1983. Enjoy the show, and may the Force be with you, always.
Rebel on the syndrome, rebel I'm a bitch, rebel on the syndrome, rebel I'm a bitch. Get ready to never not hear that again. Welcome back to the Star Wars Old People Book Club. We're here.
Right. Look at us.
In my day.
Dude, Luke Skywalker, more like Luke Snooze Sleeper. Oh,
That's no moon.
yes, it is.
Dude, a Muppet Star Wars.
There is actually a episode of the Muppet Show that is like
The special that we should.
yeah, that's like one of the things.
Patreon exclusive.
Yeah, that's one of the things we can absolutely do.
Also, now I need both those dudes to be Obi-Wan. And they just roast him the entire movie.
guys.
Called Obi-2.
And they just roast him the
Just
entire
ghosts.
movie.
Obi-Wan and Obi-2.
Just the two ghosts. Like that blue shit. Guys, how do we make this podcast into a wild success? What do you guys think? Speculate, like just spitballing. What do you guys think?
Full frontal nudity.
I don't know. I don't know if
We
that's the way.
completely changed the format to just reading Reddit posts.
That's actually a hilarious.
I think
idea.
we can do it.
That's basically Illuminati. at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. At this point.
Yeah. That's Cornerfest 25. Guys, we're back with episode 1 million of the Star Wars Old Canon Book Club, just like last time. I think I made that same joke. We have gone beyond Return of the Jedi now. We are in another land. This is a book called Lando Calrissian and the Mindharp of Sharu by L. Neil Smith. L. Neil Smith, interesting cat. Are you guys familiar with this man?
Not even
I did
remotely.
not do
No.
research
So-
on.
L. Neil Smith, if you go to his he just passed away a couple years ago. If you go to
You
his
would have a wiki?
if you go to his Wikipedia, he's listed as a libertarian science fiction author. And his most famous thing is the Lando trilogy, which we're about to get into. But he also kind of writes these sci-fi stories that a lot of the time have libertarian values in them. And also explored running for president. He's probably the only guy in the Star Wars canon who explored running for president. He ran for state legislature in Colorado at one point and lost. But in 2000, he was going to run as an independent if he could get 1 million signatures, but he didn't get 1,500. So he didn't end up running.
See, I love that you did a deep dive of the man. I did a deep dive of this book and the others in the trilogy because I learned that this book and the other two were created over the span of 9 weeks.
Yeah.
3 books in 9 weeks is
Yes.
crazy.
That makes
Yes.
a lot of sense.
it
given-
really does.
Yes.
Also, just a fun little fact I learned about this guy. He wrote some other novels, Pallas, The Forge of Elders, and The Probability Brooch, each of which won the Libertarian Futurist Society's annual Prometheus Award for Best Libertarian Science Fiction Novel. He also created that award. So, are you? What? I'm like, I can't believe you're allowed to create an award and then like give it to yourself.
That's like watching streamers create award shows and then give it to all their friends.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Except for it's like he gave it to himself.
Yeah,
here's
three
the
times.
Here's the thing, though. I don't want to discredit this guy too much because, like, I don't know what I thought a book about Lando Calrissian was gonna be like. But this is like a better outcome than I could have ever imagined.
Strongly disagree.
Like in terms of like a book in the 80s, like what is it going to be? What is the interpretation of who Lando is? And we get like it's like Trigun in space. Like it's like
Here's
weird, dude.
the thing.
Yeah.
Though. I think I agree with you. And like
it was
by and large,
trippy as
the
fuck.
characterization of Lando is as on point as the Han ones. It's just what happens in this book, like the final
It's
the
insane.
final third. I was like,
It's groovy.
what the fuck happened? Yeah, I'm like, one, I think this might have worked better in a visual medium because just describing an endless like people mover of plastic with like reliefs and
Yeah.
other things and like size stuff, I was like, what the fuck? What happened
Yeah.
to the like fun like gambling centric like Casino Royale ass movie that this book this started as?
There is, I don't want to say no structure, but there is barely any structure to this book.
It's like
crazy.
It is like not even ironically, like I want to say, like it feels like almost like what's the with Hunter S. Thompson, like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Like it's like knowing that it's written in like 9 weeks with the 3 other books, the 2 other books is
all
like
of it in
is
9 weeks.
It's so perfect because it is absolutely exploding with creativity in the same way that the Han Solo books are. Like, there's just so many ideas. There's so much going on, so much like weird wording, so much strange stuff, but it just never
You're
like.
saying this is the one draft. He did the
Yeah,
one draft.
yeah.
It was like,
Dude,
that's it.
I agree. Like
There's so much awesome stuff, but it's like a
There's-
swing and a miss for Star Wars. Like,
it's interesting. Like
Loved it.
This is
Loved
the
it.
kind of shit where I'm like, I'm glad that we're like getting some of this where it's like it's written by a person that I think can write pretty well.
Oh,
but it's like
fucking
it goes
great,
into
yeah.
wild land. So it is very fascinating.
Probably-
and at least it's
yeah.
quick so that it's not a bummer. But there were times where I was like, what are we like saying here?
Yeah,
Like, we lost.
probably my favorite, like just sensory reading experience. The way that the words in this book like splashed on my brain.
Oh my God, hold on, I wrote something
I very
down.
much enjoyed.
The stuff where he's like tied to the life crystal tree
my
in the
God.
thing, I was like, this is like out there. Like, this is an interesting way to do Star Wars writing that we don't get. Like, is that what you're talking about? The Hunter S. Thompson, the like fever dream.
It's very
flashing?
experiential. Yeah, it's very like Gonzo in a real
It
way.
almost
yeah.
feels like a movie sequence, but it's written well. Like,
Yeah.
like you. It's just very like quick and punchy and.
I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but there was a line that kept repeating that drove me crazy, and I couldn't figure. I wrote it down in different forms. It kept showing up. It says, "Ocean 2795 was a pocket of purity in a plutocrat's paradise," and it's said by multiple characters.
He says something even like, and he's very skilled with his alliterative phrases as well.
Yeah.
Like I don't even remember who says that, but
He was talking to a person that was like talking about. Oh, it was the like governor guy. He was like waxing poetic about human. Now that I know that he's like a libertarian author, some of the like pontifications about humanity and stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
okay, and some of the like idea about savages or like.
yeah.
Now I'm just shit. Now I'm gonna have to like think about that in terms of things. But
I mean, you don't have to think too hard though. Like this is not like
no, but it's just like, oh, I thought it was weird that they delved so deeply into it, and now I'm like, oh, I guess this author was like,
we got rid of our smartness to hide from a threat. Mm-hmm. You know, like there's something weird about that. The one thing I do want to highlight though, speaking of L. Neil Smith and Lando Calrissian, is the one thing that is like painfully missing from this book as a whole is like there's just no blackness to this. Like Billy D. Williams is one of the like most legendary performances in Star Wars. Like Lando is such a unique character. He's such a often imitated, never sort of like
even on this very podcast.
Yeah, like I just mean like there's a lot of characters out there that are trying to be like Lando, and like Lando's Lando, and that a lot of that comes from the fact that Lando Calrissian is like played very black by Billy D. Williams. You know, he's like a black guy in Star Wars. It's like very much a part of like this sort of like if you're a nerd and you know like one thing about Star Wars about Lando, you're like only black guy in Star Wars, bang. Like, and obviously there's others now, but I just mean like it's very obvious that the guy who wrote this was a white guy and that there was no attempt to make Lando a black character really, other than to call him dark at one point.
because it fits like legend.
Yeah, that like it was super weird just to like lose that element of him. Like he's very much like a foppish prince in a lot of ways in this. Like
he's kind of not like in the movies, in what we've had before, he is an ego. In this, it's like overtly egotistical.
He's very much like a little bit more, he has like the pirate captain sort of like fakes high society way that he deals with himself, but it just doesn't feel very authentic to the, like it's, I think like if you took Lando as a character outside of his portrayal in the movie, I feel like this is like very much like on par for the character for Lando, and I think he's characterized quite well.
Beat-wise,
he just,
absolutely.
Yeah.
He like does the things, the problem with this is like this guy also of the ones, this reminds me of like A New Hope, or just the first novelization, where there's a lot of like human Earth like the way that he writes references like,
dude, so
it's like
much.
he's talking to another person again. Like, so it's very not in the universe that much, which doesn't help. And
he always
it's like
tries,
the things that Lando says are things that like Lando would say, just not written, as you say, like particularly like well, or
yeah. And there's no sense of blackness to him like there is to the character. And
but I do think they nail the like gamesman aspect of him, and the like always any situation can turn into a profit for everybody involved.
and the
which
like
is
the largely pacifist sort of vibe, the like sort of like they give you an insight into how he's like very cool on the surface, but he's calculating inside everything all the time, like reading people, like, you know, there's parts of it that are characterized really well.
Yeah, like the like he's not a he carries like a sting beam, which is just like a 5-shot stun gun, because he's like, people that have bigger guns tend to like think with them instead of being smart, and so it's like he'll protect himself, but it's not that. And he like drinks for appearance, and he likes
to keep himself,
drinks that he like absolutely hates to drink,
so
that he just like adds and nurses it. And it's kind of a cool way to show like that he has like a facade, but he's always like dialed in to like
that's
gaming.
very Lando.
And I feel like other iterations of him have that, like the Lando comic does. Like
it's very Lando.
He like he has like a facade.
It's a show, yeah. It's all a show, yeah.
And that stuff is like cool, but
and his values of like being like, there's always like it's kind of uncivilized to like resort to violence. Like we can always just figure it out, guys. Like I love that element because it's very different than how Han Solo is. Like Han Solo's like almost like a crusader. He's like the last Boy Scout. Like he's always trying to hold people to things, and he has scruples. But Lando's kind of like, I can pretend to have scruples if you want.
The like,
I like that.
Yeah, like that he reads people very well is like a great little elaboration of being a gambler. But yeah, like his one-liners, it's like when it comes down to the dialogue and that kind of stuff, it lacks the zing.
He
and
comes
it feels
across
like
a little
it
Farquaad-y.
could be like 70s or 80s. Like the references, I'm like, these don't feel like Star Wars the way they speak. It feels like this is kind of just how they spoke at the time of this.
It feels a little Prince Valiant-y. It feels a little Poncy.
There's a weird timely nature to the book that I think one captures in a, I would say, good way, because it goes back to the origins of Star Wars, pulp stuff.
There's some grooviness
It is
here that is wild.
Pure 50s, 60s sci-fi pulp. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. I think in this case, not what I was looking for. But it has a pulp nature to it that it's not a great read.
It's definitely
but
not
it has
the
a
next,
pulpy vibe.
Yeah, it's definitely not the next evolution of Star Wars, but like, it was a good 3 hours.
Yeah, but then like Davis said, it also has this weird early 1980s, late 70s vibe that, sure, we got Star Wars, a phenomenal movie, a true phenomenon. But surrounding Star Wars were so many wannabe Star Warses that just suck. And this has that vibe of that.
It feels
that
like Tales from the Black Hole or something.
Yeah.
Some of the ship stuff feels like sci-fi-y, and then the whole bit, it almost is like a Star Trek thing again, like in the end. The whole Sharu thing is like, this is just a different, it's like science fiction. It's like science
Alan
fantasy
Moore,
in a different way.
Alan Moore's comics where it's like, okay, like sick, like tight story, like that was cool. I don't know why we brought Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewbacca here, but that was like a sick ghost story about magic gods in space. Like that's kind of where I felt this kind of landed. I'm like, okay, like that was neat. Like that was a neat episode of The Outer Limits, but like what the hell was this?
It's so purely early 80s schlock that is just, I mean, 9 weeks for 3 books means it was created to sell quick. Like, get it out, which is how it feels.
Lando is a good vehicle for the story in that he like goes along with stuff, but I definitely felt very much like he did at the end where he's like, this might as well happen. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm here now. Like, and that's how I'm like, okay.
On the one
So
hand,
you're telling me it's like a whole crazy like structure, but they also then just have a museum exhibit of like relief images showing like
it's so,
it just is like weird.
It's so like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy almost, that thing, that museum exhibit. The thing with Hall, that was like so weird. Anyway, that's what I was gonna say is like, as like the high fidelity record store perspective, this is absolutely unmissable Star Wars. Like the fact that there's 3 Lando books that are like this, that are out there, that exist, that have this type of vibe and these types of characters is like so wacky, crazy that if you're just like, I love all types of Star Wars and I want to see something interesting, you shouldn't miss this. This is like actually the very opposite of like Empire Strikes Back, which like beat for beat follows the story exactly the same and is exactly what you want out of it. This is like so weird.
This ends
so weird.
This is like the second the Han book where like it also just is clearly not over. It's like when you have like multiple like books in one book.
Yeah.
Because it's like they just get away, but like they haven't like resolved anything, and like the next book is the Flame Wind of Ossian, which we now like
we know about
starts in
Ossian.
Ossian, so it's like okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, are these going to be great? Like, it's possible that then, like, he could tighten it up and they could be even more, like, story-wise more compelling. But, like I say, for 3 hours in
I
this...
don't expect it. It's a short book.
Yeah.
It's 3 short books that probably could have been 1 book if it was edited. But, like...
There might be, like,
I'm interested.
there might be one cracker in there, like one that just, like, rips that he had in the pocket that he was ready to go, and the other 2 kind of suck.
There's some cool shit. There's some cool concepts, like the idea of this, like, highly advanced thing that was afraid of an even greater threat that like feeds off intelligence, so it had to like dumb itself down or something. Is like there's something there. Like I feel like a lot of different sci-fi settings have that like, oh, this old thing that you thought was the height, there was something even crazier that they were scared of, and that's like just innately interesting. And then even like the way they described, I love like the key and how like with their human eyes it like changes like how it looks, how many forks there are, like the way they described humans trying to make sense of like what I assume are like 4th or 5th dimensional structures. That's like pretty groovy for Star Wars.
Yeah, it's kind of across the line almost, or maybe not, but who knows?
There's a lot of like trippy like visions you get in Star Wars, but it's like very things you can be like, oh, I saw like my father's face on my body or something. Here where it's like they can't even describe what they're looking at is an interesting thing for Star Wars. It's just like in the end it's very I don't know, it's just very like not that tight.
It does put into my mind the question of like, you know, like maybe another way to look at this, like, I was talking about like the protoverse, which obviously this is in the protoverse. Like if anything is that, like that weird Marvel comics, like old canon that we have. Like definitely,
no one was taking what happened in these books and being like, remember when that happened in those books?
I'm sure like maybe the character guide has something from this in it or something, but nobody like drew from these very much. And I feel like maybe the story of like Star Wars finding its footing as like an expanded universe is just completely plumbing it of its sci-fi, like its traditional sci-fi aspects, because I feel like any time that anything like that kind of comes into the story is when it kind of loses its Star Warsiness.
Yeah.
I feel like anytime anybody tries to really say something with Star Wars is when it loses its Star Warsiness, like in the way that sci-fi does. Obviously, themes are a thing. I'm just saying, like,
like morality tales,
like the way
that, like,
sci-fi, the way
Trek
sci-fi,
or other lot of stuff is
the way sci-fi explores like a concept and like explores the outcomes of it and like kind of does like a heightened version of our reality or something like that. Like I think that's the thing that slowly kind of just gets crushed out of Star Wars for the most part.
Well, and I think what makes it weird is that usually when they do that, they like create, like in this case, a whole cloth, like a new crazy advanced race. They have to like create a whole new thing that doesn't really gel with the current stuff. So maybe if they like, because there's tons of things to say in just Star Wars, in the like Empire, like there's tons of morality there, but when you make it so overt and then create races and situations around it, that's when it feels like weird, because you're like, it doesn't really feel like it fits in this tapestry.
Right. Exactly. It's a big idea. The Sharu is cool. The Mindharp is cool. The Toka are cool. It's just like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, how far away is this from like what Star Wars is?
Yeah, it just is like, this is in the same universe. Like, it's cool. It just feels like this doesn't need to be Star Wars at all.
Yeah. And I'm not like, this is not Star Wars. It's just like, it's at a time when there isn't quite as clear of an idea, and it's very much towards what ended up not being Star Wars.
So I had to look this up because you were talking about, the proto-verse and that kind of idea. And I was like, yeah, never really, as we all know, and we've talked about, really solidifies until Thrawn, until Heir to the Empire. So I was like, man, what was between 1983 and 1991,
is it this?
What other books were there? Because obviously we know the TV shows and they get wacky and very 80s, and obviously I'm going to say cocaine was involved.
Yeah.
But I went to go look, and this might come as a shock to you, but it's these 3 books and then nothing till Heir to the Empire.
Yeah.
Like they don't even, this is it.
Yeah.
From 1983 until 1991, there are no books.
We have like
This
few
is
other
like
things.
the last taste.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
We have a few other things that are like much more canon after this, like comics and like
Sure.
fucking like the Tawani movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's plenty of Star Wars
no more books.
content,
Yeah.
but the books are done. And if you look at the Star Wars content they did create, I'm going to say the Ewok show, the Droid show, has a vibe along the lines of this
the protoverse.
book.
Yeah, it's the protoverse. Yeah, it's not the same as the old Star Wars. There's more science in it. There's more
There's fantastical elements.
there's more alien concepts, like more like wackadoo alien stuff. That's more like trippy.
Yeah, honestly, it makes me appreciate that Heir to the Empire, it brings aliens, but those aliens feel so completely Star Wars that they are instantly canonized as like, these are the aliens, this is what they look like. And from that point on, everything is like solidified in a canonical way that if you go against that, you're wrong.
Well, it's like you never see, like, the reason it's so weird in this is because there's no Imperials, there's no nothing, there's no any recognizable element of Star Wars anywhere in this besides the Millennium Falcon and Lando Calrissian. There's never been a droid that
Space gambling.
But there's never even been a droid that looks like Vuffy Raa. Vuffy
Ra's barely a droid now.
Yeah.
Dude, it's weird because like on the cover, it looks like you took an R2 droid and you gave it the Red Hood's dome, and then it has like a starfish
Sure.
necklace.
We're talking about, by the way, the first edition cover, which,
Is amazing looking.
if all things go according to plan, you should be able to see as the like show art of this episode. But yeah,
And then I like Googled it. Basically, there's a part where he gets like domed by arrows,
Yep.
and then he like in the longest like shades of like the Chewbacca machine, just really detailed about it recreating itself.
It
I was like,
reminded
what
me
the
more-
what the fuck? I thought I had an idea about what this robot looked like, and then I had to look at it, and then it at some point becomes just the starfish, and that's the droid with like a howl eye, and it's like.
but
okay.
it can like walk and move in weird ways.
Yes, and it says here, I like did that thing where my eyes saw like a paragraph below in the Wikipedia where I was looking at the picture where I'm like, oh, I think we like find out a lot more about him later, so I like didn't look, but he does or is supposed to look like basically his creators or whatever. So, and he makes several mentions to being very long lived. Yeah, and so I'm like, all right, I
This
think we're
guy,
gonna
Alex,
like.
that's what he's supposed to look like.
Yeah,
Like a weird jellyfish.
like a
It's just like a
pentagon with
starfish
5 legs
robot
around it,
with
yeah.
an evil red eye. But like his tentacles are made up of like many, many, many layers of folded smaller tentacles because there's a point where he like 3 kids in a trench coats,
Yeah.
an entire police officer,
Yeah.
and is able to like
Puppeteer
somehow
it, yeah.
as a small starfish fill out a costume in a way that makes sense and a helmet, talk to a dude and pilot a ship in it. It's like, what the fuck is happening here?
He's a sick droid.
He is like, I don't dislike.
He's a neat droid.
He's not a bad droid. Like the character is like fine.
What he
also-
does is insane, though. Like,
Yeah.
as a visual, as a character, as a droid, neat. I love droids that aren't just R2 units over and over and over again. But yeah, it makes no sense the things he pulls off.
Yeah, there's also just some things to bring up just now before we go into the plot. There's like they have like new material names for everything instead of using the like stuff that like the Han Solo books introduced that would then become things. There's like satin, but it's spelled with a Y, or like Velvoid. Maybe Velvoid comes back, but there's like different words. Well, they use just the word plastic a lot, but also
Velvoid.
like Illumo. They use like a bunch of other words like that. And then Saach, does that get like so
Dude,
according
every
to this
time,
book,
it's different.
how it works is it was originally basically tarot cards.
It's like
they have things like
poker with tarot
the 7 of
cards.
staves or
Yeah.
like stuff like that. It was like someone took tarot cards and made a version of it where they electronically
Sometimes
switch
change.
their faces,
Sometimes.
and you make a number at it. Like it's poker or
Yeah.
it's blackjack.
It's like tarot poker that is like live when the cards aren't flat.
It has changed so many times, for the record,
Yeah.
that the Saach you can buy at Disney is different from the Saach in Star Wars Outlaws.
Yeah.
And those are 2-3 years apart. They just don't know what it is, so they keep remaking it to fit.
Isn't there one you can play in like KOTOR and other games?
Yeah.
One of them I thought they just basically were like, this is blackjack
It's
now.
not Saach. It's in
it's the other
in
one.
KOTOR. It's like ancient Saach.
But I mean, like, the idea is every time it just keeps changing.
I think they should just
Which
say
is
Saach
kind of
means
fitting
like
with the fact that the cards can change at any.
they should just say Saach means like card games.
It
You know, it should be like poker, and then
And poker's referring to like the 18 different types of poker.
yeah, exactly.
It was interesting, kind of. It doesn't really make sense to me as a like believable kind of game that it just like changes all the time, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's based off whatever, but it was interesting. It makes for like dramatic
It's
changes.
exciting, yeah.
It's like a good thing for it's like how like Quidditch is like not a good sport, but if you need to have big moments in your book, the way that it's structured works for that. And then also when he like does a reading in his cards, it works for that.
Right. Shall we get into this?
Yeah. I mean, look, I know we'll talk about it, but one last.
Yeah.
I hate to say complain about this book, but it's a writing trope I hate.
The book is like. Let's be real. The book is wild.
Yeah.
It's a wild book.
There's an overuse of the. I have something very important to tell you, and I'm going to tell you. No, okay, I have to tell you later.
Yeah. Yes.
It happens
It's
often.
It's
it is
insane.
infuriating.
It's like a bit that would be funny in like one episode of a sitcom, but it
Yes.
goes for like 180 pages. It's crazy.
Oh, also the fucking like there's the sorcerer of
Roker Gepta.
yeah. What?
He's a sorcerer of Tund.
that they dropped this like idea, and then I'm very confused about like I guess he'll be back or something, but like, was he a real sorcerer?
I think so.
Because
I don't
he
know.
also pontificated that he just tossed a like flash grenade in, but also he's feared. But then when he when he has to get back on his ship,
What is magic, you know?
actually, we'll just talk about it as we go through it. But it's like I left being like, I don't
dare you.
understand
How dare you.
what you're saying, and I was wondering if you guys got like a different vibe of it. But we can just go
What is
through it.
magic beyond intention and tools, you know?
Okay.
I'm just saying. And bear with me, this is the first time I've done this myself. So I'm going to read my own outline today.
Great.
This is Lando Calrissian in the Mindharp of Sharu. In the prologue, as usual, Lando's playing Saach, which we learn involves constantly shifting cards, like David said. And he's just recently won the Millennium Falcon, and he's having trouble maintaining it because it's a very expensive thing to do. So he's here on a mining asteroid that orbits in a luxury system. Like, it's like weird to imagine, but it's like a bunch of different like luxury planets orbiting, and then one like shithole mining planet that has like very precious yields where all the poor people live. That's how it is. And he's talking about dinosaurs in this at this card game with a couple of ruffians and a weird alien anthropologist who's called Otdefa Wet, who sticks out like a sore thumb, even though he's there to learn how the poor half lives in systems that are filled with rich people who live alongside poor people.
Sure.
So he's studying poor people, and everybody's like, fuck you, scientist. What do you know, you fucking bitch? So Wild Wet is an annoying nerd, and he explains how the local natives, who are called the Toka, whose main export is life crystals, worship these like techno ruins that cover everything in the system next door, because they're in like the Ocean system or something right now.
Yeah, they're in the ASEAN.
And so this is another system that is called, I believe the system is called
the Rafa system?
The Rafa, because they don't just call it the Rafa system. Sometimes they call it the Rafa. And I thought that was weird. But
Yeah.
yeah.
All of the planets are just numbered. Like they didn't
Rafa,
even
yeah.
like give them all
They
different
do that.
designations.
That's, to be fair, that's a thing they do a lot,
a lot
in Star Wars.
yeah.
That's a very Star Warsy trope. But like, I didn't really understand that because they were talking about like, well, the Sharu are like the people that used to be there, but it's called the Rafa. But maybe it's called the Sharu also. But it's like we don't know, and we don't know what the Rafa is. So like,
Do you think it's like a Myanmar situation?
like very well could be.
It's like, I mean, we call it Burma, but it's also Myanmar. Like
Well,
that kind of.
I know what it is now. Like I've read the end of the book, so I know what happens. Like,
Well, also also knowing Defa's like on a mission, it doesn't really matter. Like, if it feels like all these things are just to hype up the idea of a legend and a treasure to get him to go there.
Yeah.
Exclusively because he's black, because their legend is that like
A black guy
with a robot's gonna come.
Yeah.
Which is such a weird. But
the point, just to give you guys the background in a clear way, really quick, there is a place that is called the Rafa. It is a collection of like 11 planets that are all called the Rafa together. And on these planets are these people called the Toka, which everybody refers to as brainless idiots because they are. They don't do anything on their own. All they want to do is serve. They can't really think on their own. They have no organized society, except that sometimes they like
randomly
meet up at weird places and chant.
chant.
Yeah. So that's their whole thing.
Also, all of the planets are covered in giant,
Ruins.
impenetrable structures that like
For millions of years.
Yeah.
nothing in the modern world can touch, scratch, or anything, and then people just sort of like build shit in the cracks and crevices between the buildings.
And they belong to the Sharu, and the Sharu sing. And that's all we know at first. They love music. They love...
Which, I get it.
Me too.
I like music too.
But the reason this comes up is because they're talking at the table about something called the treasure of the Rafa, and it perks up everybody's ears because
Lando's
Rafa's
like,
the next door
I'm gonna
system.
get that shit.
Yeah. So they're like, well, the real treasure is the Mindharp of Sharu, which has the ability to call back the Sharu in a time of need to the people. So that actually is funny because of what it ends up being. But like, that's the idea, is that the Toka revere the Mindharp because it is like the savior of their species, basically, when they need it. So Wet eventually loses a robot he was using to try and break into the ruins to Lando at the table. But after he loses it to Lando, he reveals that it's off-world in a storage locker, causing Lando, who just lent him 1,000 credits against the robot, to reach for his gun. And in the confusion, a constable, who was also sitting at the table, plants a cheating device on Lando, which I thought was crazy, but then actually comes back later, which is crazy, and calls him out for cheating. And now Wet, who is like a fucking asshole, believes the cop when he says that Lando's a cheater and now wants to like go after Lando.
That's such a ridiculous thing, especially, well, I guess he had to be on the run. Like, it's just, a lot of that stuff is like weird to set him up like that.
They at least explain it.
But like everything else is fine. Like, he already has to go get this expensive ass droid. Like, the pieces are all set for it. The idea that he slipped him a thing and had him run does not factor into anything. All it does is like, Lando just is like, says to himself, I've never cheated once, so you know that he doesn't cheat. But it does not matter. There's no plot reason or anything for it.
It just means, like that he was there to like antagonize him, I guess, and like put him on the run.
Because he gets arrested later for like trumped up charges that are not this. Like, instead of being on the run for this, and he has to send back the fucking pilot droid he bought. But this particular plot point of like faking him cheating is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, you never see Wet ever again either. I thought he was going to be mad.
Like the guy chasing him the entire time.
Yeah,
but he may show up in the next book. I don't know.
They're going to Ocean, so I'm like, are all of these characters? Yeah, I guess maybe this is just the first act of 3.
This could be just the first of a winding, beautiful
or when you
tapestry.
write a thing in 9 days.
9 weeks.
You get some
9 weeks.
9 weeks is so short. Like, I had to reread it because I thought it was 9 months. I was like, all right, that's probably reasonable.
Yeah.
9 weeks. That's 3 months. That's 2.5 months for book.
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Absolutely comes through, but it makes it so weird and good in a weird way.
I'm like impressed.
Yeah. So Arab, Feb, and Vet 40 are also at the table. They see the plant. They back Lando up. They help him get out. Lando rents a pilot droid from like the people on the docks for the Falcon because he's not good at driving the Falcon.
This whole bit is great. It has a bit of prequel syndrome where like, look, we know Han and the Falcon are like made for each other, and this whole book is about how like the Falcon is not a fit for Lando. He has no interest in having a ship. He can't fucking fly it. He's terrible.
I think he's going to kid it out before the end of this trilogy.
It could be. I'm curious. Like, he wanted to sell it a second ago.
But he kind of falls in love with it.
And you get like in trouble for being a bad pilot, which is an interesting way to look at it. Like, if you land poorly, like, that's bad. You get like
that's how it is in real
docked.
life. Hey.
Okay.
That's how it is in real life too, though. If you're a bad pilot, they dock you, dude. But yeah,
unless you're actually Han Solo.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Where you can land your plane on
anywhere.
golf courses, on streets, and they're like, this motherfucker.
We love when he shows up.
Also, totally off topic, was watching an old episode of Hell's Kitchen, and Harrison Ford's son is on it.
Dude.
And he's a chef.
Did
and
you
he
know?
Like cooks on wood planks, and I was like, brother, what? And they were so excited, not because he was going to cook them a good meal. They're like, that's Harrison Ford's son, which just Harrison Ford.
Do you remember?
He can do anything.
Do you remember public school in downtown Culver City? Right next to it, like 10 years ago, there used to be a place called Ford's Filling Station that was like pretty good. That was his restaurant.
Crazy.
And then it moved to downtown in the LA Live area at the Four Seasons for a while. I don't know. He was there. He
like his son's restaurant?
Yeah.
Or Harrison's?
No, his restaurant. His son's.
His
son's.
dad was an investor.
Maybe it was or not, but you don't get the like Four Seasons slot unless you're pretty good.
Yeah,
So to his credit, he was pretty good. So chapter 1 turns out Lando's a ship pilot, and the robot he bought to fly his ship sucks ass. So when he docks at Teguda Lusat, which is like the city on Rafa 4, it was no surprise that he also had to soil his mauve Velvoid semiformals, strapping up and burning 7 Minox off his hull as punishment for
They do a
not
good
shaking
job.
them off.
Remember Minox?
They do a good job of him being obsessed with his clothing and fashion throughout, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, like here, I guess landing with Apparently, like Minox live in space, except for they need to go to ground to like reproduce,
Well, you're not supposed
and
to
it's
bring them.
illegal to
Yeah.
bring them, and you need to shake them off before you.
Yeah, because apparently they die like right when they get to gravity because they're not built for gravity. But right before they die, they breed. That's the whole reason that you don't bring them on the planet. But he ends up just using a flamethrower and like sticking him in his fucking mouth and like gruesomely burning them all out. It's fucking crazy. And also they wouldn't let him sell his shit droid, so he shipped it back slowly instead to save some money. We learn from Lando's musings that life crystals quadruple the human lifespan and affect dreams just by being nearby. So that's like a big
that's a
part
whole
of
thing,
that's a
yeah.
big part of like what happens. And we also find out
It was a weird thing because you're like, you have like a crystal that like you can't just introduce a thing that quadruples life in here and it not be a very impactful thing.
maybe it is.
Like, I don't know. To me,
Maybe Palpatine's
if such a
using
thing
It
existed,
explains how Palpatine returned.
Yeah.
Completely.
it would be. This would not be a thing that like a couple of mining people, like the Empire, would rule over this, and it would be a different situation.
What if you were reading like Dark Empire later and we're in like the cloning vats of the Empire?
Said that it was life crystal
and they're
juice.
like, we got the life crystals from Rafa 4. Would you be like, yes?
There would be a lot of explanation needed because I guarantee people did not come away from these 3 books like, that's going to be important later,
This
dude.
is my Star Wars.
That's going to make sense.
I already am like, I know that there's the cloning stuff, and as an adult, I'm like bracing myself to have to deal with
It's not bad.
how it works.
It's tight.
Technically, from the first bit, the Clone Wars, like the idea of cloning is baked
Yeah,
in there.
yeah.
So I do have to just sit there and like take my like bumps with it.
Before the prequels existed and they truly defined the Clone Wars, what's going on in those Empire, like the Emperor being cloned stories, is so much cooler because you're like, it feels like some kind of like arcane, like necromancy Frankenstein shit.
That's how I feel like it should be to
Yeah.
keep the mystique. Is like the reason the Jedi were so in it on the Clone Wars is like they're all about using natural life force, and cloning seems like there's a really great way to make it about like perverting the force, and so there's a like very real intense reason to fight it instead of just
Art
it being
department-wise-
very scientific and
Yeah. Art department wise, they did a pretty good job in Rise of Skywalker giving that vibe. Like the Emperor himself seems very like disgusting and profane in that movie. And they do the like Snoke.
I don't know.
Look, you have to separate your own personal disappointment. I'm just saying, from a visual standpoint, they nail the vibe of like Frankenstein fucked up. He's like a little puppet on a string that's like a big machine. It's fucking gross. They did that part good. And that's kind of what it only used to be, was like this sort of almost like Dracula-esque kind of thing. It was cool.
I mean, what's weird about it is Dark Empire, which is kind of what
Yeah.
obviously inspired it. Because Biss is its own world and
Yeah.
has its own people and has existed forever, it makes sense in like a weird. There's giant Imperial, not like Imperial guards. There's like 15-foot tall dudes.
Monster,
There's weird looking guys. Executor Cedrus, it looks like fucking.
He looks like Sting, yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna be. There's all these different characters. And then in Rise, it was just like, no, like there's just
It's
Sith
an empty
here.
planet with a pyramid on it.
And like there's a bunch of evil guys there, but like we're not
never
gonna
heard
explain any
They're
of
gonna
it.
chant though.
You've never heard of it before. You've never seen him
We're
before.
not gonna explain any of this.
Yeah,
We're not
none
gonna
of
talk
this is
about
anything,
it.
yeah.
We're not even gonna let. But they also built a bunch of ships and then buried them. And you're
They're
like, what the fuck?
all Death Stars.
Yeah.
It's all this money, baby.
Okay.
Anyway, so the crystal quadruples the human lifespan and affects dreams. They
I like forgot about the dreaming. Like that is such an afterthought, except for at
it
the
totally
end.
comes through like a lot of the time, yeah. Because he is dreaming throughout, you just don't even notice till the end. All his answers come to him in dreams. Everybody's answers come to them in dreams in this whole story. It's weird.
Oftentimes, well, never mind. I was like, because of sleeping, I can then wake up and beat like Dark Souls bosses first try instead of
I know the vibe.
raging for
Yeah,
hours.
100%.
But those aren't really dream related.
But maybe they are. Maybe you just don't remember. You know, maybe you did like go practice.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that?
The weirdest thing is like,
No,
I've been playing like Marvel Rivals a little bit.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
because I guess it's a popular game.
Yeah.
I've been having a lot
that.
of dreams about like playing out Marvel, just like battles in my head, but I know that it's Marvel Rivals and not like, I'm not like Thor.
You're like thick
But
Wolverine,
I don't-
fat Wolverine.
I don't do this about, like historically, that's not how I dream.
yeah.
And it's just weird because I've had like 4 in the last like 2 weeks, and it's like the game's like fun, but I'm not that. I've been way more obsessed with other games. Just weird.
If you guys are having,
Maybe I have a life crystal.
If you guys are having dreams about Marvel Rivals, let us know on r/Chilluminati Pod.
Are you Squirrel Girl in these dreams?
Yeah, I want to know.
No.
Is she in the game? Is she
Yeah.
a champ?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Played by
Okay.
what's her face from the TV show that wasn't a TV show. The girl who was the Verizon girl for a little bit.
Oh, you know who should be Squirrel Girl? Elspeth.
It's cute.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So the way that it works, as far as I understand, is that there are energies that these crystals store. Okay? And the crystals...
Are we like going to jump ahead to say what they are? Or are you saying what they say
No,
here?
I'm going to try and like give the technology for reals because there's no reason not to reveal it. There's not really a twist to it. I'm not going to say what to what end. I'm just going to say how it works, which is that there's a jail on this planet. And the reason that this jail works is a penal colony. And it's like not quite a penal colony because you're not really doing that much work. But the reason it counts as one is because the trees themselves, which do need to be harvested, like require human essence in order to convey the essence through their crystals. So like if you go work there, it's like literally like the essence of poor people being like,
For those who,
It's a metaphor.
For those who are up on modern movies,
Yeah.
this is like the discovery in the classic film Jupiter Ascending.
yeah, yes.
That all people are basically planet farms to be turned into crystals to keep the rich people alive forever.
Right. That's exactly what it is. It's literally a idea that
Eddie
like,
Redmayne screaming in the bath.
Well, that's what it is now. That's not how it was built.
what it is it's the fires in Los Angeles, the prisoners in the penal colony, or the
Having to go
prisoners
put
in
out the
Los Angeles
fires.
making $5 a day putting out the fires that are burning the rich people's houses.
Sure.
Yeah. So he's in this situation now. He's like on this world where there's a city, there's a jail. They cultivate this tree. He's dressed to the nines in satin with a Y and velvoid with knee-high boots. Lando takes a bus in that outfit and he does it to a dive bar and he bribes the bartender into telling where the nearest high-stakes sabacc game is. And that just seems like Lando's grift, is that he comes in and card sharps people at sabacc in towns and funds his travels in that way by being really good at sabacc. Chapter 2, Lando meets an orange guy with a double-decker mustache who's dressed like a clown and smokes green cigarettes, who is a proprietor of a bar. They talk around Lando buying his way into the game, doing like spy talk, pretending that they're talking about the science of probability instead of actually talking about gambling, which was really cool. Very like 70s spy movie stuff.
I have the quote if you want me to read it.
Yes.
I understand, said the alien, that you have expressed an interest in the scientific theories regarding the phenomenon of probability. Lando had wondered how the subject would be broached. He settled back with a grin, assuming the facade once again of an overconfident colonial, put his feet up on the chair opposite and winked knowingly. Purely scientific, friend. I'm a spacer by profession, an astrogator, so my interests only natural. I'm especially intrigued by permutations and combinations of the number 78, taken 2 at a time. 5s are wild. Which is a good.
It's legit.
It's a good
like,
line.
Like
Yeah.
the problem with this book, again, just like with Return of the Jedi, the prose is on fire with these books. Like the people that they got to write these books are doing some groovy, sort of truly wacky tonal stuff with the prose.
Also, there's a thing that this does that I like. That this kind of he will do exposition, but interrupt it with in the moment.
Yeah.
Actions or thoughts from Lando, which seems unique to like. I feel like
very movie.
you normally
It's
do
very
one or
movie,
the
yeah.
other, and it's very interesting to be like to sort of like put it throughout exposition stuff. It makes it just feel more active in an interesting way.
Feels like the movie Thief or something. Like it has like a vibe to it. I don't know. It's very cinematic to me. Lando plays the game with skill. He gets into this backdoor poker game. He pretends to be worse than he is. He slowly runs up the pot, and then a tree man has to convince him to let some purple guy buy in with a shipment of life crystals. So he does it, and the tree man is like kind of grooty. It's kind of fun. He picks up his weird new droid that he got from Mr. Wet. Vuffy Raa, which is a number in another language, and we already talked about how weird this droid is. He's a droid made for starfish tentacle people by starfish tentacle people, and he settles in at the Hotel Sharu while he weighs his options. He considers selling the ship and the droid or looking for some treasure, and then asks Vuffy if he can fly a ship before heading to bed, which Vuffy can do.
There was a line here that like made me. It said, "What was it like?" Vuffy Raa offered his abilities as a servant or something, but Lando was like, I haven't had servants for a very, very long time indeed, my fine feathered droid, and I don't intend starting again with you. That had the hints of like how they would drop little Han things from like, oh, is he like...
He comes from money?
From money? Like, what's up? Never anything like that is ever really like referenced again, but I was like, okay, here we go.
It's like a very Tintin.
He also
setup.
frequently is like, don't call me master.
Yeah.
Many times.
He does it throughout
he's
the
a
book in a
slaver.
way that it's like not...
Maybe.
What?
I think he's a slaver.
He does not... He is anti-slavery.
Right. Yeah.
He is now. He's now for sure, but
Okay.
Like backstory, there's something there clearly.
yeah, he's like very anti-slavery. He could be a slave, but I like if he said I haven't
Well,
had
yeah,
servants,
he hasn't had servants for a long time.
I hope they don't make him a slave.
No. Oh, I do have a question for Davis, though. But no, he's not a slave. I think he comes from high society, and he's rejected that, and he hates when people call him master because that's what they would do when he was younger.
It's
right?
just
I feel
weird.
like that's what
It's
it is.
weird because this implies that he came from high society, and he likes high society. Like the entire time,
he's a rake.
He's like, fuck having your own ship. I'm going to sell this, and I'm going to go on a pleasure. He's like, he loves public transportation. He like mentions
He takes the bus
He's
in his
I'm
like
gonna,
nice outfits. I love that.
I'm going to gamble, dress nicely, and like drink on these cruises instead of flying myself there.
He was made for Vegas.
So it's weird. I don't know if that's just uneven characterization or if we're going to find out more stuff later.
Quick Davis check-in. How are you feeling about the difference between calf
And caffeine.
Where do you stand?
He's the one that hated calf.
Where do you guys stand on this?
Caffeine is just the same. There's nothing different about caffeine and calf. They're
What's
just
weird-
as dumb
what
as
is
each other.
better? What do you guys
What's
think
weird
is
is
better?
that this book does like he talks about like stimulant drinks, but then also says caffeine, and you're like, I don't know. If you can talk about it not using earth terms but using concepts like a inebriant or like a stimulant or something, why don't you just go a little further? But then also he wears satin but with a Y.
Like
robes,
I like tea.
so-
I like tea in Star Wars, right?
Man
like
smokes cigarettes.
because tea is a genre.
I like cigarettes. I also like cigarettes because cigarettes don't necessarily have something specific inside.
Oh, you mean death sticks?
Well, no, death sticks are drugs. Death sticks are bad for you.
Yeah, like
Cigarettes, you
they
can have a
talk
weed
about
cigarette.
the difference between like cigarettes and cigars in here because
Yeah.
they're like what's in them can change, but
Yeah, and
Caffeine is
our
like-
clown dude he smokes green cigarettes. Those are something else.
Yeah.
Which same here, green cigarettes. But that's exactly what I'm saying. Is like I don't mind that type of thing, but caffeine toes this line where like okay, in a universe built of the same elements, caffeine could exist. Would it be called caffeine? Like and discovered in the same manner and like are we like
So are you telling me, is there a unifying theory in your mind that caffeine is coffee and calf is Four Loko? Is that what you're telling me?
I think
they're all. Like,
I think
come
they're
on,
bad.
Luke.
I think they're bad as each other because it's hard for me to swallow that caffeine exists in Star Wars because it's not just like a building block of the universe. It's a molecule, right?
Sure.
So like it's very unlikely that they would discover a molecule and name it the same thing, though like an element that's like one of the primordial building blocks of the universe, I could see having the same name in Star Wars and in
So you're team caffeine.
I don't think I'm team either. I don't think like you asked me which one's better.
You gotta pick.
I think they're both bad.
By the way, I don't like that either of them either because it's like you so often do the right thing where you just don't name it the same thing, but you can use things like like cav, like for like a small animal. Like
Yeah.
when you take like or ursine, like when you take things that describe a larger portion of things, but not a specific like thing, that's fine to me. It doesn't like register it as weird, but yeah, when you're like coffee, that thing that we have with like the beans, there's a very specific thing. Tea is like you just dry any sort of herb,
Right. Coffee
and
is
then
the
you
name
put
of
water
the-
in it. Like it's
Coffee puts it on Earth.
it's too specific.
So you would prefer
I would rather say
if it was something called like
slurge.
yeah, give me a cup of slurge, and then the descriptor was it's
brown.
The black liquid poured out of the thing, and he's
Yeah.
like when it touched his lips, he felt the energy, like that kind of vibe.
Yeah, you don't need to tell me that much about that it's coffee. Like, I don't need to like even know that it's actually the sci-fi analog for coffee 100%. If he has a warm cup of slurge and he's drinking it and it's morning, I get it.
Yeah, sure,
I get it.
Yeah,
That's better to me. Better at keeping me in Star Wars. That's all.
all right.
But yeah, I guess I would go for caffeine over calf though, because calf is just straight up the word for like
It's just caffeine.
But no, calf is like, I feel like closer to just being called coffee than caffeine is.
So you would. So I honestly, I feel like I would like it more if they did something like Cup of Joe.
Yeah,
or
like
some,
literally like Joe. is,
Yeah,
like the name of the
something
drink.
like we
I
get.
hate that. I hate
but
that.
Isn't coffee?
Yeah, I hate that. But I love slurge, like slurge or a cup of gruss, like anything that just doesn't sound anything like.
Yeah, like it wouldn't be Joe. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's like a very earthy name.
You also can give it different names in different society. Like it's a many planet, many system.
Or in the tradition
universe.
of George Lucas, a cup of cum.
right. George's favorite.
Yeah.
Everything in Star Wars covered in it.
But so he's like asking Vuffy if he can fly a ship. He's like drifting off to sleep. Then the door busts down. The cops are here and they arrest him. And he leaves Vuffy behind and gets processed. Like he just like gets his ass beat by the cops and taken away. Next chapter, he's appreciating the beating that he got for like it being like not that like permanent of a beating for how bad of a beating
Yeah, it was like he noted that it was entirely a like message beating. There was no actual damage.
Gentlemanly beating.
It's yeah.
He's brought before the big giant governor, Dutis Mayor, who tells him that basically everything that he's done since he left the asteroid was illegal. But Lando correctly guesses by using his Saach player's mind that he was really just trying to scare him with trumped up charges before offering him an alternative. So he calls him out on that, and he's like, "Hey, don't spoil my shit."
He literally
man."
was like, it's not like fun if you guess.
Yeah, like don't steal my thunder, dude.
Which now knowing where that character went, I guess makes sense that he's like a chump that was like, hey, don't spoil the fun.
But also, he's also like, well, at least you didn't figure out that I'm manipulating you into going. So Lando's relaxing in this like weird, ugly purple, yellow, and green Velvoid bathrobe that he borrowed, and he's listening to Mayor talk about how the Toka are like fucking worthless idiots, and he ruminates on slavery and the draining effect of the crystal orchards. And cryptically, the governor implies that the muted, mindless, broken people who look like old people from birth are actually human. Before there's a big explosion that takes up everyone's attention, and I didn't even remember that until looking back at it right now. It turns out to be the overly theatrical entrance of the bizarre, enigmatic Roker Gepta, a sorcerer of Tund, like we just
Do you
said.
want me to read the
Smoke bomb quote?
enough of this.
Yeah.
The blue-black smoke column shrieked, evaporating into tiny orange sparks that winked and disappeared. A sorcerer of Tund, Lando thought, groaning inwardly. How quaint. Members of an allegedly ancient and rather boringly mysterious order from the remote Tund system, they were all given to flashy entrances. The rest of the column condensed into a vaguely humanoid figure about Lando's height and general build. The old boy had probably tossed his flash bomb into the office, then stepped through the door quite casually into the center of the smoke. That's what I'm like, so they're just like Wizards of Oz, except that later
No. I think they're just like Jedi that have been to theater school. I think they're just like,
but like, is that because he could believe that in the way that Han's like, I don't know, this is all bullshit, and they actually have that ability, but they don't tell you, they don't ever explain or show more, except for at the end, he can travel through space in
powerful.
a way that hurts other people's bodies that it doesn't hurt him at all.
I think he's legit a wizard. I think he is. I just think that he is a type of wizard.
They're like more
that
They
just-
like play it up.
They're showmen, yeah.
Yeah.
But they also are real. Like the joke is that he's like a Jedi that's like a capitalist.
It's like a fake one.
Yeah,
A Vegas magician.
yeah. He's literally like a Vegas Jedi. I don't know.
I like that.
Chris Angel.
Like N apostrophe G
KRIS.
He hints that the Toka's religion actually explains that their current muted state is like something that we don't understand, and promises much more even than that. And Lando's mind goes wild, but is like ultimately subdued when Gepta mentions that it's all about the ultimate instrument of music, which is not that cool to Lando. Also, Lando knows what trombones are. He mentions trombones. The story goes that the Mindharp of Sharu is the center of this religion, and while the Toka don't really have society, they do sometimes meet up and chant, like we said, sharing the verbal story of coming here as colonists in the ancient days of the Old Republic before the Empire, finding the billions of years old Sharu people and being left enfeebled by them and broken by them before they headed off elsewhere, possibly fleeing from some greater threat and leaving the Toka behind to tend their ruins and life orchard.
Are you
Which
aware?
is very Destiny.
Yeah.
Are you aware what that greater threat is?
No.
Are you aware of it?
I did. So I looked it up because I was like,
Why'd you look it up?
well, because I don't know that it takes place in the next few books. I was curious, so I looked it up.
Wait, don't say it.
Okay.
Do not look. If we're gonna get to it, please do not say
I
it.
don't know that we will. That's what I'm saying.
If you know it, it will be in our reading.
Okay. All right.
We're gonna
Maybe.
do everything.
Okay.
Is it?
I actually do not want to be spoiled on like.
I will
things-
not. I will not. I will not spoil you. But I know what it is, and it's fascinating. Genuinely fascinating in a way I don't think this book deserves to be that fascinating. I was like, oh.
Maybe there's a good one.
But I mean, if you now that you know it, research it and see like, did this book actually know what the threat was, or it was just a concept, and then it came time to like actually write it, and so somebody wrote
Honestly, it seems like the second one there.
it. Okay.
Or it could be the third one. What's the
thing-
third one called? It's the Mindharp of Sharu.
Oh, I mean, not book wise. I mean, the ladder of what he said.
the latter. Yeah.
Quick thing about this, it ends up being a lie, but he talks about the pre-Republic era, the like colonists came in a pre-Republic era, and they describe it as like the early days of the late unlamented shit. Where is it? Sorry. Oh, in the chaotic, erratically recorded preceding era before the Republic, a respectable amount of exploration and settlement was carried out, albeit haphazardly. That would just stuck out to me because we've never really heard much about the pre-Republic era. And
It's
so it
crazy
was
because
interesting.
that's-
They were like, oh, there was an era. There was a lot of stuff, but it's like not well documented, which to me is either just fluff or like an explanation for why you can just make shit up.
To be fair, like in the canon of the old Star Wars, like that's accurate, and it was an age of exploration, and that comes in multiple stories, not even just in the Old Republic, but like even one of the big stories from Heir to the Empire has to do with the ancient age of exploration, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Gepta produces a small tuning fork thing that seemingly distorts reality when you look at it for too long, that he says might be a tiny version of the Mindharp of Sharu, and which is supposedly the key to entry. He also mentions that the Mindharp may have been an enslavement device, and he tells Lando he wants him to go get it in exchange for giving his ship back and staying alive, which is kind of just a threat. But Lando mentions he was probably going to sell the ship anyway and argues for a shipment of life crystals on top of that to sweeten things up, because otherwise, what is this, what we're doing? So Gepta agrees. He's like, fine. He sets up the Falcon so it can go planet to planet in the Rafa system, but it can't leave the Rafa
Okay.
system.
I have confirmation now. It is not in any of the other books.
Then how is there information on it?
Because, and this is what's crazy, the mysterious force, right? This weird thing is mentioned. Star Wars Old Republic, Star Wars Old Republic Rise of the Hutt Cartel, Darth Plagueis, Star Wars Clone Wars, Wrath of Darth Maul, Jedi Search, Champions of the Force,
What?
Ambush at Corellia, Ambush at Salonia, Showdown at Centerpoint, Darknest 1, Darknest 3, Legacy of the Force, Betrayal, Riptide.
So we're gonna encounter this force a bunch.
Apparently, this is where it all starts.
But should we not save the explanation? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna. I'm just
Turns
saying
out they're really important. This is
massively important.
Okay, so this is just
the first time they haven't been named yet, but when they're named,
they're not named for like 20 plus years, like
10 years.
When they're named,
isn't all that stuff from what years are those?
Champions of the Force is like what, 94, 95?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying some like the Old Republic or other
Jedi
stuff.
Search is in the 90s.
I think I know what this is now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's clearly going to be a thing, so I don't want it spoiled. But
it's crazy. This is where it started.
That's funny because I had the thought that it might be this, but I was like, no, this is so old. Like, this is so.
It doesn't seem like this would be it. And the fact that it is, I was like,
interesting.
What?
Now I'm wondering if it's that thing. I don't want to know, but if it's that thing that I like accidentally looked up when somebody had a question about it previously.
Don't worry about it.
I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Also, Gupta mentioned, or Gepta, what was his name?
Rokur Gepta.
I must explain that for some decades I've employed others, anthropologists, ethnologists, and the like, many of them incarcerated at the penal colony here, and thus anxious to reduce their, let me skip ahead, to record and analyze the ritual behavior of the Toka, believing that in the long run, such an effort might produce some particle of interest or profit. I have made many such investments of time and wealth throughout the civilized galaxy, or space. Feels very emperor-y, like I'm still curious because it's like, oh, you like look into legends all across the universe. I wonder if this guy is going to be anything, or if it's like if he's a dead end of a thing, like the
Bene Gesserit.
Yeah,
it's the same shit. It's like they're like,
but he doesn't say like
what's true?
My order. He's like, I have done these things.
Well,
I guess that it makes sense that he lives 4 times longer than people.
I don't know what a Sorcerer of Tund is, to be fair. I don't know if they ever appear again.
It just seemed like an interesting idea that I like grabbed, but based on where this first book went, I'm like, I don't think these guys are prime time.
They just like made a bunch of, theoretically, there's like a bunch of Highlanders out there.
Also, we talk about this a million times. The Force is real.
Yeah.
It's the whole universe.
That's true.
So like there can be non-Jedi, like it would be weird that only the Jedi.
There's plenty of non-Jedi Force users that we're going to run into. Trust me.
Sure. But do all of them need to throw in fucking fireworks for their entrance?
There's all kinds of different Force users.
I know.
Remember the ones that were like obsessed with staring into the void from the new canon?
Yeah.
Those are really cool.
There's a lot of great concepts they could do with the Force existing, and they keep going back to the Jedi pool, and it's like that was just like a religion of the Force. It wasn't the only Force users.
Did we read the Jedi? I forget what it was. I think it was just the regular Star Wars comic from the Disney Marvel era in the volume 1, I think it is, and it's Yoda. And Yoda like goes to these people.
Yeah.
And has like this like crazy like fable of like people that like use the Force in a different way, right?
Didn't he do that in one of the Clone Wars, like last seasons or something like that?
That's when he goes and he confronts like the dark side of himself.
Yeah, that's a different.
Wasn't there like a race where they're like, we do the Force our own way?
Yeah, they're like float. They're like I'm trying to think of. They look like Mr. Burns when he was an alien. Yeah, they have that vibe.
Yeah, this was it was like a one shot in the Star Wars comic.
If we didn't read that on maybe New Canon Book Club, I definitely read.
Maybe we just read it. Yeah, maybe it was like pretty close to where we were at because I kept reading all those for like 5 more years. All right. Anyway, back in his gaudy ship suit, Lando has recovered his belongings from the authorities, including his weird robot Vuffy Raa, who's determined now to like prove his usefulness, knowing that he was going to be sold. And
the weirdest thing was they made like a big deal about him earning like 17,000 credit, like enough to buy another starship, and they never like talk about what ever happened to his like winnings or anything. Like, did he get robbed? I don't know. Like the beginning of it is so much about money. And he earns a bunch, and then they like don't ever talk about it again.
Yeah, I think
not crucial to the plot. Just I was like, so this like huge amount of money that you were like planning on doing shit with.
I think the point is that he's like up at the beginning of the next book, and he's gonna be like, I think he's gonna be living large.
Knowing that they did this so quickly, it's fine. But this is like the planting of the like cheating thing on him, where I'm like, it's just from a normal storytelling standpoint, it's weird that you brought up a bunch of things that just then never are dealt with.
I think also maybe we haven't heard the last of Mr. Jandler, but we'll get to Jandler in a minute.
It really does feel like, though, the way the book ends is like not the end.
No. Jandler also is the Star Wars Chandler Bing on Jen's.
I'm actually like pretty confused about that guy.
Chandler?
Because
Yeah.
who does he actually work for?
They don't really explain, but that's okay. Lando actually bonds with Vuffy Raa for a second because they like both realize that they both believe that violence is rarely the answer. And Lando accidentally says friend in his own mind, referring to the droid for a second, and then corrects himself. Lando catches Vuffy up on everything that's happened while they're sitting at a bus stop waiting and just letting buses go by. And when he's at a loss for ideas, Vuffy's just about to suggest a public library to look for clues about the Sharu when Lando ditches him and runs into a nearby bar, the Poly Pyramid, which is strictly no shoes, no shirt, no XT helmet filters, no service, no droids allowed.
So it is funny. It's a cute little moment where he's like, we should go to and he's like describing a place that is the public library, but the other things are like, yes, you're right.
A bar.
We should go to a bar. The no XT helmet filters, is that like no extraterrestrial? Like, are they like racist?
I think they're like, if we can't see who you are, you can't come in this bar.
Yeah, like a mask. You can't walk in wearing a mask.
Okay. We know there's a lot of like alien species that need that. So it is like kind of like,
Yeah, sorry, dude. Yeah. This bar has taxidermy trout and jackalope with an E on the walls.
Dude.
It's a miner's joint. Lando asks the barkeep, have you a pot of caffeine at hand? And he warns him
actually
that
it
he
says,
might...
have you a pot of caffeine to hand?
Oh, even worse.
I just
Have you a pot of caffeine to hand, my good man? That's what I'm saying about Lando just being like Prince Farquaad a little bit.
Yeah.
well, especially when he's talking to Mose, who does speak in like old, he does get like, he's like, oh, doth it? Really?
Yeah, he
doth.
He has high speech, yeah. The bartender warns him he doesn't fit in at the bar. He smokes for 45 minutes at a table with the key out. He leaves, grabs Vuffy Raa, heads to another bar. He continues this key out caffeine smoking routine at a few more bars, draws some glances from some Toka servants who like hover around him. At least one of them, one time he leaves Vuffy in a robot daycare by the front door, which is funny. Before finally grabbing his first real drink back at the bar with the clown man from yesterday, who was not on tonight, and where droids and the weirder aliens were very welcome.
Dude, they really, really took
We don't know how you're kind here.
racism in this era. I feel like pretty soon we just like don't talk about that
Never again. Yeah.
But yeah, even in like it felt like already in other mediums that was just sort of like not done anymore. And in this book, really every bar you're like, okay, like I guess, like because doesn't a guy come after him for like being a friend of a droid? It's weird.
Yeah. Vuffy and the droid though, like the bartender droid, they like chop it up.
It's also weird because, like, in this particular place, it's not even like droids have taken their labor. It's like slave labor. It's a very weird, like...
They're like, you just can't come hang out in this bar, you droids.
Just like all he knows is like,
Yeah.
that's a thing still.
So then when he's at this bar and he whips out the key for the Toka floor sawdust bucket thrower man, that guy, like, eventually runs away and goes to retrieve a Toka elder called Mose.
Oh, yeah. Also, sorry, quick aside.
Sure.
They mentioned sapient robots do need sleep, and the smarter they are, the more they need, which is just a weird... They don't elaborate on that at all. I think that was just part of like when he went in the bar. But also, yeah, did you mention that like he produced the fork and the guy like it like drew him like a moth to the flame to him?
That's basically, yeah, that's like where we're at right now.
Okay.
Is this guy like comes up to him and is like, he notices that there's like a thicker ring of sawdust around him because the guy has just been circling him doing sawdust, and then he like puts it away and the guy's like, ugh, and he like runs away and goes to get this guy Mose, who says he's the high singer of the Toka, though the singing is very unpleasant according to Lando. He recognizes the key as connected to the Mindharp. Mose even has a tattoo of it on his body. Mose knows exactly what the key is and what it's for, and seems to think Lando should already know too, because he seems to be an old Toka prophecy realized. This is where we first start the like situation where he starts trying to tell him shit and getting cut off that you were talking about.
Yes.
It happens big with Mose right here. Mose joins the party. A man with a gun bursts in, ready to kill. Also, Lando knows what canned sardines are and has a cocktail with lime's juice in it. Proper noun, lime with a capital L. Lime's rose juice is in his cocktail. Turns out this dude is Jandler. This guy who comes in with a gun. He's some kind of gentleman racist or something.
Clancy Javis. Chandler is like not a name.
I don't know what's going on with Jandler other than that he's a gentleman racist with impeccable style who lost the bar in a card game to someone who doesn't discriminate.
What an incredible description you've given him.
Yeah.
But Chandler is also the cop from like earlier.
Yeah, well, they don't know that yet, but yeah, he's
But
also
I'm saying
this
like it
guy.
doesn't make sense. Like
We meet him as the racist guy who used to own this bar, which seemingly is true. He comes in, starts talking shit purely because of the racism beef. He's not allowed because he's a racist and he has problems with who they let in the bar now. That's all he's here for right now. Unless he knows that Lando's here and he's here for that reason.
except like the problem is that they don't give an answer.
It's like,
he's like a hired goon,
But he
that
happens
comes up
to be a
lot
racist
from
guy?
the other guy, and he plays multiple characters.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you like,
How
okay,
could
but is that backstory real? Like the bartender droid, we know that Vuffy Raa is like on the take, but like, did you also pay off that? Like he did happen. Lando happened from bar to bar. It's just like they don't ever explain it, and they give this guy that you meet later again a backstory that I'm like, is that true or is that not true?
I think it's true in this case because how could everybody be in on it and know him and hate him unless it was true?
But then he's like buddies with Lando when they meet again.
Yeah, but he gets like a round of applause from the patrons when he knocks him out. So
You're
basically what happens is Lando...
But that's why I'm like, it's weird that you're like, and that was that guy.
I'm with you. Lando distracts Jandler for a second so the droid bartender can smack him in the head. It works. Jandler went down like a sack of Minoc guano was a great quote from the book because that is fucking disgusting.
You mean Minoc Buddha?
It's just like he went down like a bag of shit. It's like very funny to me. A bag of bat shit. The whole bar cheered for the asshole getting his ass beat. Lando got a free drink, but in the confusion, he realized Mose and the key had disappeared, that Mose had snatched it. He catches up with Mose, like as he sees him like cresting the corner.
He's like, like a foot.
Yeah.
It's like a cartoon.
Mose has no hesitation, smacks him as hard as he can in the head with the key. They have like a weirdly brutal knockdown, drag out fight that gets violent. He keeps like,
It's
throwing each
weird.
other in tables and shit like that.
It's weird because I can't tell if like Lando is going easy on him. Like he like sort of describes that he's like not trying to hurt the old man, but he also is getting his ass inadvertently whooped by Mose.
I think the bit is that Lando is like weak and is having trouble beating an old man, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Because he ends the fight abruptly by just like, all right, fine, and like slams his head on the ground, and it completely like ends Mose. But like for a lot of it, he's not actually intending to get his shit kicked the way that he is getting his shit kicked.
I think like the joke is that Lando's like a man who doesn't get his hands dirty and he's trying to like fight a man. I think that's the vibe.
Yeah,
But he did mention not wanting to hurt the old guy, and then he finally like has enough and then just like ends it. So
I mean, I feel like that's Lando's. It's done much better in other books.
Yeah.
But one of the things, even in the comics, that we love, and I still kind of love about this, where he doesn't want to hurt him, and then finally he's like, yeah, all right. And he knocks him out. The idea of Lando, in the comics where he's like, I don't ever carry a gun. I never, like, blasters, terrible. I have a blaster. You fucking kidding me? Blast, blast.
Yeah.
Like, I like that idea of Lando as like, I don't want to do this. Okay, I'm going to do this.
He talks about when somebody's like intimidating him, and it might even have been in that first with the governor, where he's like, he hates when people try to intimidate him, and he's like, he makes a habit of unintimidating himself wherever he goes. He's like, wants to just completely be looked at as a non-threat, which really works with like the comic where it's like, actually, he is very deadly, but he comes off as completely hapless so that it catches everybody off guard, and you will never think he'll do something to you. But then he like has to every now and then.
And that's the one thing about this book that, and we'll get to it, we're almost to the part where I was like, you were talking about earlier, Davis, where he's just, this thing happened? Okay, yeah, all right, I guess it's going to happen. And it sucks because it's Lando, and Lando always has a plan. He always is like 8 steps ahead of everyone.
Are you ready for this?
And
Plando.
Plando, yeah. And in this, he's just which I guess the only reason
Here they make him a gambler. And in the beginning of the book, like he even like says in the reading, like fold, call, like they even use like gambling terms. But then I think they even kind of like half-ass that later on, where it's like
that was sick though. I liked that in the first time around.
that's why I'm like, in the beginning, it felt very much the way they do the Han books. Where I'm like, sick. We're like, he's the gambler.
Cool
this is tight.
opening, yeah.
And then he just gets dragged along, and he doesn't even like gamble well.
He constantly loses throughout. Like this book is him just getting beat down over and over again.
He usually wins in his mind, but he never wins in the. Except he does win a few times. He does win like at a few different points out of pure luck.
Yeah, but it isn't like the Lando
or the
that's
things he
good
sets
is
up, like letting the cops live later. When he got rescued, I'm like, oh shit, Janler's back. And it was like, nope, it's a starfish somehow filling out an entire human-sized suit and convincing a person. I'm like, what? Even that thing didn't work? Like, what the fuck is happening?
Well, no, they were around.
They're in like jail.
Yeah.
They just mentioned that they're in jail and you don't see them again and the book ends. 9 minutes they had to write this book.
They tell you that they're still alive because you know that the guys that he sent to Rafa 11 in the porn and whiskey truck are going to be back.
They better be, but also the whole like planet, not the entire system,
Burned.
every structure evaporated. Like they're all dead.
Yeah.
They should all be dead.
The only saving grace I have from this book is that it's 4-ish years before Yavin. So maybe Lando just hasn't come into his Lando-ness yet. And he's working on it. Like that's
Lando,
the only thing
but
I
in
can
the
think of.
beginning, Lando is like Lando-y. And I don't always know that he's like the plan guy. I definitely know
Maybe
that
this is how he is like, I learned to make plans from this misadventure I had.
But I'm saying like,
I wonder if Han's in here.
He does have like plans and hopes, but he also, they go through smartly in the beginning, like that he tries to not have too many plans, but he'll like extrapolate ideas. And like when he was like talking to some guy and he's like, where is this going to go? And then once he like mentioned a thing, he was like, well, all my excitement ended because like now the only logical thing is this other dumb thing. So I don't know. They do keep him consistent with like the comics version of him where he like teams up with Imperials routinely because he's like, well, hold on. You like to be alive. I like to be alive. That's something. But he doesn't do any of that for the second half of this whole fucking book.
He's just dragged along the
To be
entire
fair,
time.
nobody does anything for the second half of this book.
Yeah, all
besides just like trip
Touché.
out, trip out in like geometric space. So he's beating the shit out of this old man. Vuffy and the bartender are like, this is outside of our pay grade. We are not programmed to deal with this. They just watch it happen. When it's over, Mose says sorry. He's ready for Lando to kill him, but instead they team up again. Lando and Vuffy take the 10 kilometers back to the Falcon to stay the night in relative safety, but Mose takes his own route, and Lando, I think, and Vuffy take like the bus back or the shuttle back. Mose is like, I'll go my own way. It's not dignified for me to travel with you in this way. And he ends up like at the thing before they do somehow with like a bunch of Toka. And Lando definitely calls those Toka savages a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Lot of times. Anyway, turns out the Toka are just Moe's farewell delegation, and though the local cops show up and disrupt their ritual, they're actually only there to deliver the life crystal shipment that Gepta promised. And I love that longshorebotts work the docks. Great word that didn't exist before this book. Vuffy is horrified.
Isn't this where we see Janler shows up, right?
A little bit.
He's here delivering the life crystals and is like, hey, like, sorry about, like, you're all right? Like, sorry about that. Like, and he's like, don't worry. Lando's like, I'll do the same for you someday. But like, if it's still Janler, he just got his ass beat 10 minutes ago. Like,
yeah.
I do think that there's like something wrong. Like,
I think maybe
in the haste, it doesn't make sense.
I think maybe he just decided to make one more guy Janler than he needed to.
Right, because isn't it later that it's revealed that it's like, and I fought you at the thing too, and you're like,
that was also
how?
You? Yeah.
That's why it feels like he's like a paid actor where he's like, oh shit, I gotta be on set for like, and then like puts on his next thing. He's like, I'm a cop now.
It could just be like a bit also. Like if he just keeps being like, for example, like if we do 3 books of this and by the end it's like, what's his name from Yakuza, just like climbing out of the fucking trash to fight you. and shit like that, where you're like,
It's
Chandler,
like-
seriously? Like, you work as the fucking, like, French fry guy on this, like, beach resort in this other... He's like, yeah, I worked here for 3 years planning to get you, man. Like, it could be that kind of thing.
I guess it could be. There is a little bit more seriousness to the book than that, even though there is some pretty out there stuff. But, like, I don't know, if your whole thing is... If you're going to, like, make reveals and secrets be part of your story, like, fine. Those could be rewarding, but, like, think them through. Otherwise, you're just like, the fuck is this?
We shall see.
Why?
We shall see. Vuffy is horrified at the damage Gepta's people have done to the Falcon to keep it in the system. And while Lando thinks the Falcon is ugly and doesn't care that much at first, Vuffy compares the Falcon in this state to someone's pet being hit by a car, and it gives Lando pause, and he apologizes.
There is, like, they do a lot to, like, show you that Vuffy is, like...
They really are bros.
More, and also, like, a different level of intelligence...
Than, like, C-3PO.
than, like, most of
Yeah.
them. And that's why I'm like, we'll see if these books do more... turn him into that thing that, like...
Bollocks kind of has that vibe, too.
They went through a lot to explain that, like, for him, he existed so long that, like, you almost have no other option but to sort of become sentient and,
A
like,
new type
think
of
about
awareness. A new type of awareness exists,
But there's, like, secrets about him that I, like I said, like, I saw, like, a paragraph that I didn't mean to see and was like, okay, this is, like, there is more to him later that I will see.
Yeah, vibes.
But they plant the seeds here.
So later in the cockpit, Lando and Mose are chatting, and first Vuffy Raa interrupts them to reveal that the cop who showed up to drop off the life crystals was the same one who kicked his ass on the way to meet the governor, and he was also Chandler, which is weird. Lando appreciated him asking after his health, but was puzzled at why the Chandler play even occurred, and things only get weirder when he realizes that Gepta only picked him and Vuffy for the mission because they couldn't get in themselves, and he fit the prophecy, and also the prophecy calls him a dark adventurer, which is weird. After a shit night's sleep,
It's
though,
also weird because, like, I feel like only humans would think of that. Like, there are aliens of every color
Yeah,
and
sure.
whatever, and, like,
yeah, but it's just a
there
black guy.
are
Yeah.
aliens that are actually, like, dark in the, like, gray or truly black color
Yeah.
spectrum,
Or
not
fur.
just a, like,
Yeah.
darker
Yeah.
brown. Like, it's like a weird.
What about Black Chrysanthemum?
It doesn't make. Yeah, it's just like, I get that you want to make it work for their, like,
prophecy,
but, like, it's such a light.
It's a stretch, and we know that Chandler's a big racist, so maybe that's what it's all about anyway. After shit night's sleep, Lando slams down some more black caffeine as he and the crew decide what to do. Mose fingers Rafa 5 as the hiding spot for the Mindharp and displays a surprising knowledge of local astronomy, which he contributes to one of the many thousands of songs he's learned as the high singer. Lando is annoyed at how capable everybody is. In transit to Rafa 5, birthplace of the Sharu, they start hitting, like, these, like, crystalline plungers in orbit around the planet, which they eventually identify as, like, rudimentary artifacts from the Sharu space program.
It made sense. Planetary orbits were always the richest fields in which to discover the leavings of primitive technology.
Yeah.
There were probably cameras out there, used spacesuits, free fall table scraps, all of them practically as good as the day they had been jettisoned, barring a little micrometeorite and radiation damage.
Just like us.
Which I thought might come around and be a useful bit of information later, and it doesn't. It actually does not.
Nope.
It is interesting in that you're like, oh, in Star Wars, they don't ever deal with, like, satellites floating around something.
Yeah.
And that would be a problem, but I guess they have such future tech, it's not really an issue.
But now we know that we now know why they weren't cleaning up their trash at the very least.
Sure, I guess it ties into that we go through the evolution of the species, but it's just like a weird, it's like a plot point. They hit it and it wakes them up and they, like, talk about it, and then it's like, oh, there's nothing else really there to.
Right. Lando is just like, why didn't you use the deflector shield? And Vuffy Raa was like, I don't know, slipped my mind. Rafa 5.
Which is, that also doesn't come back around.
Yeah,
it wasn't like he intentionally did that. He's like a highly capable pilot.
It just
except
happened.
he fucked up.
Yeah, it just happened.
I don't know. It's weird.
He just fucked up. Rafa 5 is remote, less populated, it's extremely cold, and the pyramid that they're headed towards is huge. It's severely multicolored, plasticine, extends deep underground beyond where instruments can read. It also continues 7 kilometers into the air, which is crazy. Lando suits up for cold, Vuffy is Vuffy, and Mose sticks with a loincloth, and it's only a little while before they're ambushed by more Tokas with crossbows. As they're walked back to the ship through a life orchard, Lando sees the weird techno-organic trees that seem to be planted in the ground like living Legos.
These are this is the most like Steven Universe gem they're like crystalline, computerized cactus like trees that just
I think it's
are like
supposed
laid
to,
out like a circuit.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to highlight that they're man-made, but I don't know. And
They're described in such detail that seems cool, and then again, now that I've read the whole book, is irrelevant. They're like, the arms only extend this far, and this only extends this far, and you're like, great, tons of information that's completely irrelevant.
To be fair, detail for detail's sake, I think there's space for that. I just think that when you're in flow like this and you're like a character that's noticing like one or two things, it's wild that like something that you spend so much time on is then just like something that I personally have been thinking about since you mentioned it, but like doesn't actually matter to you, the writer. So it just feels like, why did you say that just now?
But like, it's not relevant to anything, and like he describes a million other things very quickly, and that he spent so much time, and like for me maybe it's like the ADHD or whatever, but like when he does, and he does this several times, exhaustively explain certain things where I'm like, okay, I'm reading it like it's legalese, where I'm like, what did I learn here? I have to like, I'm like, okay, so it's this, this, and this, and then it's just completely not important, and you could have described it much easier, much better, that I'm like frustrated where I'm like, okay, so you just decided like, was there like a page count or a number count? Why did you use so much words to so weirdly describe this thing that you could have just been like, it's a crystalline cactus. You already say dinosaurs and fucking jackalopes. Like you have no problem.
He probably just had a sick ass idea in his head and he like got it out. You know what I mean?
I guess.
It's probably that, but it just, I would have maybe edited it.
Edited it.
Suddenly back at the ship, all the Toka have taken to calling him a fraud, and Mose wants him to give back the key, though they can't seem to take it from him directly and would rather just dictate and restrict his movements via weird crossbows that you don't have to reload. And after marching through the wilderness for hours, Lando figures that the Toka still can't kill him or take his key, even if they know he's the imposter, though also he knows they would have no problem with him dying. And in fact, they also believe they've killed Vuffy Raa at this point, who they've like filled with arrows. They call him the emissary, and he realizes that he's not the emissary and the keymaster. He was just the one, and the robot was the other. So to get the key back, they take all his clothes off and tie him to a crystal tree in the cold to die, and fold up.
Frozen.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. So okay. So he's tied to this tree. Next thing that happens is the planet comes to life in the morning, interacts with the pile of dirty cables and Vuffy's like dead self outside the Falcon, and it absorbs some like nutrients from the Earth. Then Lando's like tripping out, tied to the tree in the cold. And
here's the weird thing: is like the Vuffy Raa stuff isn't the planet. It's his own like crazy engineering that's like highly advanced.
But it's sucking minerals out of the very soil of the Earth.
Oh, it does pick that up. It's just weird because
no robot does this.
Again, like, yes, this is like another level of design, and I think it will play in when we figure out what Vuffy Raa really is. But it also, at this point, they know the planet sucks. Like, it's another weird like misdirect, or just they're thematically too similar that they shouldn't really be happening at the same time. And it's like I don't know. To me, it's like confusing, and it's not.
Question. Do you think he was tripping out when he like Mr. Freezed?
Dude,
was that really happening?
Dude, I was thinking about that.
Wait, what do you mean when he Mr. Freeze?
It's like when Mr. Freeze blasts you and you have like the ice on your hand and stuff? That's happening to Lando.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But he's also tripping balls,
he's
and I'm
tripping
like,
out. He's like talking about how he's thinking, but his hands are slicing his stuff.
So I thought that was just a really creative way to describe like when you're like freezing and going into like hypothermia and how you're freaks out. But later he talks about how that was the tree zapping his intelligence.
Yeah, But he also is talking about how he's sitting there, he's getting so cold that he can't handle it. He doesn't understand that his hands are trying to free him from the bonds, but they are. And then he gets free, and then he stands up and he's like, my toes just fell off. But oh well, I'll just deal with that later. I can just put them in a regenerator. And like, I think he literally stood up and felt all his toes fall off, right?
Again, I thought
I don't know if it fell off or not. He definitely had. They later talk about that he has, frostbite, and they have to regenerate his stuff. But in the beginning, he thinks he's like hot, which again was why I thought he was doing like the hypothermia thing. But
it's probably a little bit.
He was
of both.
going crazy because of the tree. They say it later,
right, and I couldn't tell if that.
And it took him like a sec to like remember, and now knowing how. Now I'm just realizing right now, based on how they describe Moe's getting intelligence, it wasn't him like becoming less hypothermic and like remembering where he was. It was his intelligence
returning,
increasing in orders of magnitude. Very confusingly written though. But he does have like frostbite, but they have like...
It was just weird that he perceived that his toes were off and that he didn't care that much because he was going to just get him back later.
Yeah, because he's like,
does that tie into why? Actually, it probably ties into how they were talking about like the fucking Toka don't care. You can, as long as you just like feed him or whatever, they'll do anything. They don't give a shit.
It was just, I just couldn't believe that happened, that he was just like, oops, there goes my toes.
It was a crazy thing to read.
Yeah.
Because it didn't seem like you just don't read that anywhere.
That's why I was like,
that's not how Star Wars people think about
Hunter S.
injuries.
Thompson, why I thought it was like interesting, where I'm like, oh, this is like, I guess like a fever dream written.
It definitely
This is like, I guess what it might feel like. But yeah, it is like, it's weirder now to know that it wasn't because he was frostbitten, but because the tree was...
Probably a little of both, but yeah, like he was definitely literally having his brain affected. Like he was actually tripping out because of a literal source, which is like weird. This is also where we learn about Vuffy's weird biology, that he's like actually made of like many little tiny tentacles that are like
that can fold out to become a whole
they're
human.
Slowly repairing him. He's driven insane. He's writing horrible poetry. Lando's fingers cut him from the bonds. Vuffy comes online. Lando rises out of the haze. His toes fall off. He gets his jacket on. He ties his pants back together. He realizes Vuffy Raa is one of his best friends he's ever had. He mourns him because he doesn't know he's still alive. And then he gets rolled up on by Jandler, who says if he thinks he was in trouble before, he has no idea. He also wants that key, but Lando's ready to do it the hard way.
They got sick. I did love, just because I love when they like describe tech and stuff, the like parkas that like their future parkas that have like all this
Warmth
crazy shit in them.
Yeah. So tight.
Pretty sick.
Honestly, I bet you that exists.
Smart parkas.
Like if a spacesuit exists, there's probably like the $20 version that's like got like that warms up.
Well, between like
from
this
your iPhone.
stuff and like the gel pack, like this also reminds me of Han when they talked about like how they can easily like knife wounds are nothing, and so it like changes the way that he approaches combat or situations.
He just like doesn't mind
and it's
getting
like
stabbed.
The same thing here, where it's like he's like, I mean, regeneration's like painful, but it's like no biggie, and it's like, what kind of things would you do if you like workplace accidents like ruin your life?
You're like,
but here, because you were just telling me about whatever show you watched when we went to Chicago about like this explorer and stuff, and it's like, what happens when you can like just shrug off so many things that we like would be debilitating for us?
He had to reach his hand into cold water to get his canoe to save all his supplies, but in order to do that, he had to freeze all his fingers.
I mean, I can tell you exactly what happens. TIE fighter pilots.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense that they're like, why include shields to TIE fighter pilots? Like everyone's
They all just look
expendable
like-
and we'll just like regenerate or
They all
reattach
have like
them.
big seams on their faces
I mean,
and shit.
I don't think that the same thing there, because it's like they don't care about people; they're expendable.
That's exactly
in the same way. Like they're not going to like save them from space.
But that
like,
translates
that's
to
how
my
that-
body is expendable.
That's how that
'cause I can
mindset
just regenerate it.
That's how that mindset gets there. Is like, oh, if like wounds are nothing, suddenly like poor people getting hurt is nothing.
Well, also like we in our own planet of just this one to have trouble dealing with the fact that like there's so many people, but each one of them is like a person that's
dealing with
worth like real things. And so when you have like a giant galaxy, it's really easy to just like treat people as savages.
Yeah, that's true. So then he thinks he's cooked, but then there's a boom from overhead. The Millennium Falcon's here. Vuffy's here, looking decent, a little worse for wear because Vuffy's not fully. He's like covered in bumps still or something, but he's getting there.
Oh, he's still dented from the arrowhead.
Yeah, it seems he's figured about lying to get around his harm no living creature thing. He's like, he can be mean and like pretend like he's going to kill you. Lando clocks Janler, knocks him down. Janler says he's tired of all this caper bullshit, begs for his life.
Dude, him and me both.
Yeah. Lando says fine, he just wants to know what the fuck is going on. Janler's like, I have no idea what's going on. It doesn't make sense to me either, but Lando's like, okay, but I got a plan. Originally, the plan was just to leave them floating in space in a bubble to be picked up by whoever, but instead he sticks them in an autopiloted barge to the edge of the system with no comms near a planet that's like Rafa 11, which is like remote as shit. That's basically Pluto. They just have flashlights, porn, and brandy, and then he heads out to whip Mo's ass for ditching him, and they head home first to fix Lando's feet in some gel that's not necessarily Bacta because they don't call it Bacta, but it probably is Bacta. And then as Vuffy's patching him up, they angrily decide that the best place to find Mose is probably back at the pyramid. So they go back to the fucking pyramid on Rafa 5 and immediately find him sitting on a dune and smoking a lizard, is the quote. But it turns out Mose was only smoking the lizard to eat it, and it smells very bad. And even as he's trying
he was smoking in the sense of cooking, not like
Yes. Yeah,
I thought at the end
It's
of the
just
chapter,
weird
I was
where you're
like,
why?
The phrase though.
Well,
Yeah.
and
I'm
the
gonna
way
use that,
that
by the way.
like Lando Lando's like, oh, you ate? It was like, yes. What do you mean? Like, why else would he just be burning a lizard?
he
over
was
a
just
spit?
he was grossed out because the lizard smelled like shit, and he couldn't believe that he was eating that nasty lizard, not like the notion that he was eating. He was just like, he just couldn't believe that nasty thing was getting eaten. Smells very bad. Even as he's trying the I am your humble servant routine and being mysterious, Vuffy and the Falcon notice more Toka coming up from behind the ridge with crossbows and tell Mose to send them away. He does. He agrees to take them to use the key at the pyramid anyway, and then he grosses Lando out by eating the disgusting, unforgivable lizard, which causes him to mention both the ISPCA and the Epicures Club, which are both animal jokes about stuff from Earth.
Yep.
If you're Irish, that's straight up a reference to the ISPCA. They go to the pyramid, and Mose points out an area to dig. And when Vuffy digs it up, Lando says, escargots and entropy. So also escargot, the French snail dish.
Yeah, is a thing.
Is a thing. Inside the lock that goes with the key, and Mose mentions it, and they must enter without entering or something like that. But Lando doesn't care about that.
Ah, yes, Lord, but now it is as it has been told. We shall enter without entering. We shall walk the hallowed halls, and yet they shall not echo to our feet. We shall travel to the farthest corners without going anywhere. We shall dream therein without sleeping, and know without learning. And in due course, and in their time, we shall discover the harp of the mind. Setting free the harp, we shall set free the... And then it gets cut off.
So Lando doesn't care.
Is
Yeah.
like a literal but also dumb way to describe what happens.
So Lando's
But I
just
get you
like,
just
he's just like bonk. He just like goes, cool, bonk. And he puts
Doesn't he like bonk it wrong once and then it goes in?
Yeah, he just like puts it right in. And
Which I get it. We play video games. You don't
Yeah.
always like slot
the physics aren't always
the
beautiful.
the emblem in correctly.
At first, nothing happens, but then everybody but Lando disappears. And the book's over. That's it. That's the end of the book. We're done. Just kidding. Lando goes to punch the pyramid in frustration, discovers it seems to have become some kind of hologram. He explores this notion, puts his hands in, puts his hands out, watches his hands like come back out, make sure it's good, steps back inside, or not back inside, just decides to cross the threshold into the pyramid. Mose, it turns out, was leaning on the pyramid as it became intangible and tumbles into a dark space where his mind begins working better and he discovers a better way of wearing his underwear. And then Vuffy was not touching the pyramid when the key went in the lock and yet now finds himself in a maze where time is distorted due to size and which has hidden permeable walls like a Doom map, I guess. And Vuffy feels fear in here.
The Vuffy thing is like weird.
I still don't quite get it.
because the later revelation about why his size changed is that like it feels like this their whole planet is basically like a Disney ride to like re-educate people. And any like inorganic material it thinks is just like part of the ride. So it like, oh, oops, let's like recycle it. And it like starts to reprogram it. But it doesn't make sense that it lets it like walk for a while. It shrinks its size and it only removes one memory from it, which is just Mo's, like his existence.
Or it started to, but didn't, you know?
But like he doesn't remember Mo's, and they're like, oh, and then like the computer is like embarrassed that it like mistook him. Like there's a bunch of weird shit now.
Yeah.
We're in
Crazy Town.
I thought we were in Wizard of Oz. Like I thought when they got to the hall and the guy like there was like an embarrassed computer that it was like going to be like, this was all a shitty bit, but it's real.
We're in Crazy Town. Inside the pyramid, Lando finds himself in a large open room like a warehouse. He notices he can see out of the pyramid, though the pyramid also seems capable of distorting space as well as time, as size and scale seem to be in flux. Vuffy grows.
It's just like you're looking through like glass,
Yeah.
which is cool, but they do spend so much time talking about how wide and long everything is.
Vuffy's having a rough time. Mo's mind continues to grow even though he can't see. Things become easier to understand. He's laughing at the very notion of the universe.
Question.
Yeah.
So Lando becomes big,
Yes.
but
Does he become bigger? Or isn't Lando just regular sized and they shrink down the smaller they go?
It's
great question.
It becomes
both.
like fucking Alice in Wonderland. It's so weird because they like argue about who's shrinking and who's growing, but in the end they get to the big room and you do like
it turns out
shrink.
It turns out it's Lando who's growing.
He asks to grow to pick up the Mindharp, but he shrink because he's like, at the end you'll just return me to my regular size, and they're like, most definitely.
Yeah.
But then the droid, it isn't like becomes the size of like $1. Like, was it microscopic?
The
or
point
like
was
a bug.
the point
Yes,
was that
it was
Lando,
the size of a spider by the time they see it.
Lando was walking and shrinking because he went big, and he was shrinking at the same rate that the hallway was changing size.
So it really is Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, and so it looked
That's what
like
I'm saying. Like they pre-shrunk
Oh,
Buffy.
because they thought he was part of the pyramid.
that-
Oh, okay.
It doesn't like
We're good.
the way that they give you the information in the moment is like, oh, okay, I guess you referenced that. But now thinking about it re-encountering the plot points in the reverse order, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like what you did, like you shrunk it down. Why did you shrink it down up there when you created a system that shrinks it to where it should go? Like,
well, we'll get
this
there.
just doesn't
We'll
make
get
any
there.
fucking
we're
sense.
just a little bit ahead. Suddenly, Mose is where Lando is. He's twisted his loincloth into a Mobius cylinder. Lando notices Mo's eyes are opaque white all of a sudden, but doesn't seem bothered by that.
By the way, he and Mose should have encountered each other immediately.
But
they're
didn't.
in the same place.
But they didn't.
Because they needed to like make it mysterious
It's trippy.
and weird.
It's trippy.
Also, there's a whole time element too.
Yes.
So I mean, like he could be in the same place at different times.
But the only place that actually is relevant is Vuffy, because he shrinks. It also makes time go faster. Mose and Lando are in the same time.
But we don't know what
They
happened
speak to each other
Mose.
normally. They talk about how Vuffy has to like, luckily he's a droid, can hear that like how slowly they talk and like release his vocal
Right.
bursts slowly so they can hear him.
We don't know what happened with Mose. Because somehow also his eyes popped out.
You're right. Like a lot of this could just be like they're being intentionally weird because it's supposed to be a hyper
Like
advanced
trippy, whatever.
civilization, but they do a bunch of things that we can't understand that are very dumb. But like, yeah, like why does Moses' eyes get
First they're
burned
not
out?
but that's crazy because first they're just opaque white. And then
he's blind the moment he enters, though.
He's blind the moment he enters, but first they're opaque white, and then he comes out again and they're slashed open and healed over.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: time is weird because they do step out at a different time, like 4 months back. Anyway, let's just get to it.
It's
Let's
like
just get to it.
Contact. Time is weird, but Mose and him in the beginning are on the same time.
Right, you're right. Let's just get to it though, because I think it's confusing not to.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
Even just
So
go through it.
time continues to stretch for Vuffy. Vuffy says glitch is a cuss. The maze becomes crazier. Mo's eyes have now become gashes that Lando can see. Mo considers it a fair trade. Mose considers it a fair trade in his transformation from a, quote, retarded savage into a, quote, intelligent, civilized man, which is crazy.
Knowing, like, that he's, like, a libertarian writer, and it's not like, I'm not saying, like, libertarians are, like, crazy in this way, but there's a lot of, like, talk about people, savages, sentience,
yes,
that now is colored, just like looking through the giant structure they're in, a little differently, knowing, I was like, why is there so much focus on this? And now I'm like, maybe there's like another bent there to it.
Isn't it like everybody in the Emerald City likes what they see because they're wearing like emerald sunglasses or something?
I mean, literally the end, like, so the system burns to the ground at the end of this. The
Yes.
man is on the nose.
Right.
It's just, yeah, but, sorry.
The smart people return.
Right. The smarties return.
And society crumbles. Lando becomes obsessed with a tiny little metal spider that's crawling around until it gets on him. He realizes that it's Vuffy. After reckoning with the size difference,
The only good part about the, like, exhaustingly written Vuffy part about him making his way through the maze, which went on just
too long.
so fucking long. And again, like, I'm trying to, like, take all these words and in my brain think about what he's actually doing, and it's exhausting. It does perfectly describe every video game that has those, like, Lost Woods segments where you don't know
Yes.
where you're going. I'm like,
Sure.
Scary Game
him
Squad.
getting, like, pissed off.
Act 3.
And him going, like, crazy because it takes him, like, a day or something. I'm like, I do feel what you feel, where you're like, there's no discernible pattern. I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. So they reckon with the size difference. And as you said, they figured out a way to communicate that accounts for the relative difference in the passing of time based on their size, because Vuffy learns to, like, release the voice sounds at a pace where somebody...
He also is moving
right.
much, much faster, his
So
speed.
Vuffy decides to settle on Lando's earlobe. Mose guides them down to a frictionless slide, which they ride down for hours into an area beneath the pyramid. As they go further down the slide, which changes direction...
They also, like, talk so scientifically about, like, geometry. It's like, we're curving slightly. How much? Well, I would say we're going about 20 miles an hour or kilometers an hour.
The slide
with
changes
this percentage.
direction, goes up and down angles. They can sit on the slide. The walls have slowly become transparent, revealing naturally occurring fossilized timelines of life on the planet evolving, as if the slide was designed that way by the Sharu to teach you about their, like, evolution.
It's a, like... one long, like, bas relief of their evolution, which is weird for a, like, multi-dimensional mind thing. Right. And Vuffy's, like, explaining it, and then he, like, gets bored, and then Lando falls asleep and dreams he dreams it all because they've planted the seeds that, like, it affects your dreams with the life crystals. And it sort of is like, why do you have this long Disney ride if just your dreams give you all the information? I'm like confused, except for that he needed a way to, like, he's like, I can't just have him fall asleep and explain it because that's not exciting. So instead, I'm going to create this, like, very weird long slide.
Yeah, the implication is that it is a training module for the people to, like, send one after the other. They're going to learn. This is a course we're going to take. That's not the case at all.
It's also not the case because they sort of explain or pontificate later that actually their whole civilization is below all this shit and it's still there. And this is all that stuff breaking when they, like, open the Mindharp. So you're like,
I think this was to teach you when you go back to becoming a Sharu what the Sharu are. Am I
guess
wrong?
Actually, no. I think what, if I'm remembering now, what it actually might be was that they were like, this whole trap is set up, or this whole scheme is set up so that once the next intellectual race finds and unravels this, they know that it's safe to be smart in the universe again. So I guess this is, like, actually just designed for them. Doesn't make it better, but I think that's maybe what it's supposed to be.
Well,
like Voyager?
No, because the
whole point is that, like, they made it a legend,
yes,
and made them stupid so that when intelligence can survive in the universe, some species will unlock it. And
because the fear was that there were, like, intelligent creatures are being killed off by
whatever it is.
Whatever that was. Yeah.
It's so exhausting that this like what this is.
So Mose and Lando discuss whether there's a sense that's better than sight. In tracking their evolution, they seem to be starfish people, similar in shape to Vuffy Raa. That amounts to nothing. The further along they go...
It goes nowhere because they just become... The real reveal is that they're just the Toka.
Yeah.
You're like...
I thought at that point, I was like, oh my God, we're going to learn this droid is like that old and one of the droids from these people.
Right.
And that's... No, doesn't even matter.
That's also what I thought. And then it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Secretly, which I think is like a misdirect. I think there's a bunch of red herrings in here that
I
are...
clocked the Toka right away.
They even like give it away as
There's
a
like
potential
clues, yeah.
option. It's weird. There's a lot about this now that I'm really processing all of it that is not...
So like you said, Lando took a nap, dreams the entire history of the Sharu civilization, rising in the manner of humans until their technology evolves into the bizarre, wrong giant shapes they found when they got here. Next time he wakes up, he has shrunk slightly, so now Vuffy seems to be double the size they were before he fell asleep. The weight of their body is now tangible on his ear. After recalibrating the big-small communication method for their slightly different sizes, Vuffy is finally able to tell Lando that they've never heard of anybody called Mose and that they should make sure they're feeling okay in the head because Mose is just gone and seems to have never existed while Lando was sleeping. Still not exactly sure why that occurs. As they continue...
We're not sure, but now knowing why it occurs, it's still such a weird...
I still don't exactly understand why it occurs. But
like why Mose disappears or why they made a whole bit about like the two of them arguing over whether it's like he was ever real or not.
Yeah, like why he forgot Mose specifically versus anything else. I don't quite understand because it seems like he still understands everything else that's going on.
That's what I'm talking about when I said earlier. I'm like, okay, the like robot computer is like embarrassed that it messed up and accidentally started to erase his mind, but it's like all it erased. The only thing it erased was Mose and nothing else.
Yeah, so as they go down the journey, Lando tries to convince Vuffy that Mose existed, but eventually gives up, moves on to like a...
It also doesn't matter that Mose, like it's irrelevant.
Well, eventually he just comes back, but instead
In a pimp suit with like fucking gemmed out Oakleys.
Instead of doing that, he does a
It's insane.
He does a Saach tarot reading. Warns lots.
Fuck.
He warns lots of bad stuff is still ahead in the uncertain future, but that their journey is almost at an end. Coincidentally, they arrive at the Mindharp of Sharu in that moment and immediately gives Lando a headache. There was continually some disagreement over who was growing and who was shrinking as they approached the Mindharp on its pedestal, but eventually the hallway's AI, which is called Hall, which was made to encourage them to watch the evolution exhibit, but was also a repository for all relevant information.
The hilarious thing is it's an AI that was there to make them watch the thing, but it came a day late. Like, they didn't interact with it until they've had to get to the end of it.
Yeah. It
It's the dumbest, super smart fucking species I've ever...
It told them that it was Lando who was changing size, not the robot. Lando realized he could get the Mindharp down from his pedestal by having the hallway grow him in size and shrink him back down again. So he does. He asks Hall.
It's like they just needed to give it like Lando had to make one smart move where he's like, I bet I can guess this, but it's dumb. It doesn't make any sense and it doesn't matter.
So he does that. He asks Hall for an exit, leads them to another key like the one that they got, the little one. Mm-hmm. They touch it, they go out, opens the door, and they walk right back out onto another planet, Rafa 4, in the streets of Taguda Lasat again. So now they're just back on the other planet. So now standing there in the street, immediately Vuffy Raa calls the cops over, has Lando arrested. Dude. Just out of nowhere, doesn't say anything. Lando doesn't even seem confused by it. It's so weird. In the governor's office...
They're also like, we can't arrest a person based on androids. Like whatever. And it's only because like Lando like tries to run when the cop's back is turned.
They're like, oh, there you go.
They're like, okay, well, we got him.
Yeah. So
many extraneous things that are like, why? What is happening?
So in the governor's office, it's explained Lando was chosen and manipulated from as far back as Ot Defa Wet, and that Vuffy Raa had been a plant the whole time to make Lando match the prophecy. And now, while Ralker Gepta was still in orbit around Rafa 5 waiting for Lando to emerge, Governor Mare, who now had the Mindharp himself, was going to press his advantage, take over the minds of everyone in the system on his own, and also now Lando is in prison at the Rafa 4 penal colony. So Lando sits in his cell thinking about Mose all night while listening to the Toka chanting.
By the way, Also, like, why did you like? I guess because he's evil, but like for Lando, there was no reason to like arrest him. He did his job. You could just have like
got him.
You just
Loose
like
ends.
great.
They just arrested
they did the
him.
same thing to Defa, and they gave him another like a fucking tight ass job. Like it's just
They just arrested him because I think that Vuffy was trying to figure out a way to get him to the governor without getting him to.
once you get, but like, do you remember that the last thing he does is he's like, "What are you gonna do with that, Lando?" And he's like, "I'm gonna go take it to the guy that wants it." Like Lando wasn't like, "This is too powerful. I can't give it to them." He was like, "I'm going to go
I know,
give it to
but
them,
the
and I'm gonna
governor-
get out of there." So
but
there was
the
no
governor-
reason.
the governor
except that they're
doesn't
like
want-
Disney villain evil that they would.
No, he doesn't want him to take it to Gepta. He wants to use. He's betraying
No.
Gepta.
My problem isn't that they arrest him in the beginning to bring him there. It's that once he has the Mindharp there, he should be like, "Sweet, you're free to
Later.
go." But then he's like, "I'm gonna fucking make you work in the mines forever." Where you're like,
He's trying to.
why? He just did his
to,
job and he was like gonna do it. It's just weird.
He's trying to cover up his tracks.
Yeah,
I guess.
it's just cut loose ends. It's, you know.
Yeah.
But he,
Villains.
it's,
You're
I don't
right.
think
It's,
it's- I don't
you're
think
right.
it's a great idea.
villain
it's
stuff.
also
You're right.
irrelevant
I
because
would have shot
he's-
him in the head if I was going to do
in
this.
his own brain, he's about to use the Mindharp and have total control of all life there. It's completely like irrelevant. It's just, but you wrote it in the book. We have to spend time with these plot points. So I'm like, why are we doing
What
these
boggles
things?
my mind is who does the robot work for? The governor or the sorcerer? Because if the robot works for the governor and not the sorcerer, why would the sorcerer let the governor send his own robot? Like you'd think.
Also, he's like,
You'd think that
I
the
had
robot-
to do this.
You'd think the
But
robot.
once I did it, I got to save you because my programming. And you're like,
But you'd think the robot would want to bring the mind harp to the sorcerer, not to the governor. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Point is, Lando's in a cell. He's like, why does this Toka language sound familiar to me? He's thinking about that. Dude. Then Lando gets hosed down and taken in for morning processing at jail. But that is over immediately. There's an earthquake that happens, sends the entire camp into chaos. A strange cop takes him into his cruiser, supposedly for marooning some
not
guys.
a strange cop. A cop
No,
that
it's
to all intents and
it's a
purposes
strange cop.
appears like a fully
It's a strange cop.
human-sized person.
It's a strange cop. Tells them that they are in trouble for marooning those guys on Rafa 11, but when in there in private, the cop reveals himself as Davis has already blown. It's Vuffy, who's still loyal to Lando now that he pre-programmed the betrayal is like now done. He tells Lando the earthquake.
I don't even know how you mistake that dude for a human cop. Like, I just don't know.
Guys, he's like a 3-foot starfish.
Don't worry
But
about
he's
it.
in clothes and a helmet.
Do you remember the lady from Mars Attacks? How did that one work?
I don't know, but I'm like,
just saying.
It really felt like it just went off the fucking rails, and I'm pissed.
I didn't. This part did not bother me that much. Vuffy's still loyal to Lando now that Lando's like actually his friend and the pre-programmed betrayal is done. He tells Lando the earthquake is because Mare is using the mind harp. Lando realizes the tacos speak High Tramic like on Tramis 3. They race to stop Mare. Vuffy Raa was there when Dudus Mare told Roker Gepta that he betrayed him and was going to use the mind harp for himself, not to just control the Toka, but everyone in the system. Gepta tries to warn him not to use it, but he doesn't listen.
And then he's like, and eventually beyond.
Yeah.
So run while you can.
And it's like, no, and he hangs up on him. On the way to stop Mare, Lando tells Vuffy everyone's wrong about the mind harp and that it came to him in his dreams last night. Vuffy tells him the Falcon's all fixed up and ready to go. He's like, what? When did you do that? He's like, as soon as we got here. And
there's a part where like Vuffy's trying to explain to him and Lando suddenly knows everything and he's like, the dreams, the chanting I heard last night, it's old Tramic, the language of the Toka.
Yeah.
I was on Trama 3 a couple years ago. I still can't understand the language very well, but my subconscious apparently made something of it. I woke up this morning knowing the truth about the mind harp and I know we got to get out of this place now. I was like,
but the life crypt.
you just went through the thing that tells you everything. Why did you have to make up a story where you're like, oh, by the way, I also know their language now from another adventure.
Because he knows the
And I
twist.
just now,
He knows a twist now.
but
No,
like,
he's saying.
I'm saying, why did you create this like story where he's like, oh, by the way, 2 years ago, I was on this old place that's not even in the system, but it's their same language.
why didn't
so
have
now
that
I know it.
put
You're like-
in him
you're
when
like-
he was expanding his mind, kind of?
You're like, what? If you knew all this,
I don't know.
Do you remember that every planet in the system is called Rafa and then a number? But he's like, I was on Tramis 3, which is the planet that where Tramic, which is the language of the Toka. How the fuck is the language of the Toka from another planet?
Split
That
off.
is where they are.
It's
fucking
off.
stupid.
It's a split off
Guys,
language.
Here's Davis's thing.
Davis doesn't
He's
like
obsessed.
when Star Wars is in a
He
real
gets
place.
pissed off when people just
When he remembers that it's a
have some
story.
simple logic. I get it. You had 9 weeks, but like, fuck off. What
not-
are you talking about?
It's not that important to the rest of what happens. Is my
It
thing.
might not, but you know how like catnip goes like makes people go crazy.
Uh-huh.
Dumb shit that doesn't make sense makes Davis go crazy.
I get it. So you just can't control yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I love that I've discovered
How
Davis's
was
literary
fucking
catnip.
Chandler beat to shit, and then 10 minutes later was like, "What's up? I've been here the whole time."
You want to get even more mind fucked? What if
By the guy that gives himself the fucking Libertarian Book of the Year award?
It's not-
That's fucking hell.
It's not a
No
ref.
wonder he did nothing else. No.
It's not. But what if Chandler was a reference to both Joey and Chandler from Friends?
No.
Okay, on the way to stop Mayor, Lando tells Vuffy everyone's wrong about the mind harp. Vuffy tells him he got the Falcon ready early enough that he could have just left and avoided all of this, but doesn't matter.
Dude, I was like, fuck you. Fuck you. Like,
Lando
what a
was
dumb
like-
thing to be like, oh yeah, no, it's been fixed the whole time. It's like,
Oh, okay. Yeah, Roker Gepta climbs into a converted fighter to shoot across the system in less than an hour because G-forces don't affect him because he's a real wizard. Dudus Mare was still trying to use the mind harp over and over again, even though it was like ripping the system apart. Lando and Vuffy get back to the Falcon and the police cruiser, fight their way through the guards. They get to the ship when the ramp come down, and it's Mose dressed like Magnum P.I. in a slick haircut and a nice suit, and he has cybernetic bug eye surgery.
dude,
So he can see again. Even though he didn't need it, he can now see again. Which is like best of both worlds in my mind.
at the top, still aged and wrinkled, but sporting a stylish haircut and expensive business suit, stood Mose, High Singer of the Toka, where his ruined eyes had been now glittered a pair of faceted, multicolored optics like those of a giant psychedelic spider. What the fuck? What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about?
He went quick.
How did we get here?
He went shopping really quick.
Mose, like the you see beyond sight. You know beyond knowledge. You have the most intellect of any species. You created things that the best of now couldn't make heads or tails of, let alone fucking scratch. And you, the height of fashion to you is like, I gotta get me a fucking 3-piece suit and give me some fucking spider glasses.
Yeah.
Like,
He's up.
I imagine, by the way, his hair is like in a ponytail.
Maybe he was a producer back in the day.
By the way, random aside, I
Music
have
producer.
never seen Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
Until like the last 2 weeks where I'm like multiple seasons in.
Oh, God, it's the
I
best.
just imagine somehow Jonas Jr., like his look is what fucking he looks like, but with like,
That's
you
exactly
know those
what-
like Oakleys that they tried
the
where it was
over the
like
top?
over the head? That's what my brain is making.
Yeah.
It's like insane. Also, another thing I just realized it's kind of weird. The whole bit about the life crystals, well, there's a lot of bits about them. One of the bits is that you can't sell them because there is a, like, the government runs a whole thing, and to even, he got arrested
It's
or
illegal
fake
to have them,
arrested
yeah.
because a guy tried to, like, pay him in life crystals. He asks, you can't trade them except for through the guild or whatever. He asks for, or he gets as like a reward, a whole storage fill of life crystals. And me, little OCD Davis, was like, why would you get a reward that you can't cash in?
Black market.
This is so dumb. The only reason it makes sense is that in the end, they destroy everything. So he now has the only life crystals. But from a like story logic, like Lando should have been like, I can't do anything with these.
I would take them. It's like Coke. Like you can sell Coke.
I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's illegal to sell Coke in America, for example. But
if you have them, you
people
can
do
make some
deals
money.
in amounts of cocaine all the time.
They're rarer now, but like they did make a thing about being like, you can't sell them through other.
No, I'm
means.
with you. I'm just saying that's like the above board truth. But the under the board truth is that anybody who wants to live 4 times as long is going to pay a premium for a fucking crystal that you can hang around your neck, and it gives you trippy dreams, right?
Yeah, I mean, I also thought that the crystals being on the ship would be a plot, would like tie into.
Not really. Yeah.
Nope. But it's like, why weren't you just like, I'll just have half that value in credits?
It
right
might
now.
be that, like, what if we find out?
Actually,
that,
there's the
what
flame
if
wind
we
of
find out?
Ocean.
And what's the last one called? It's even the craziest one.
The Star Cave of Thambaka.
What if we find out that this book takes place like 100 years ago and that Lando like lived this whole time? Anyway,
You know what? That'd be a twist I would actually genuinely appreciate.
I'd be so happy about
I'd be
that.
like, whoa!
Mayor can't get the Mindharp to work right, so he orders the Rafa 11 guys onto the roof to intercept Gepta because they're the only guys who haven't left because of the quakes. Lando reveals what he dreamed and what Mose confirms, which is that the Sharu are the Toka, just made dumb by their own crystal trees, which they made to hide their intelligence from some threat in the distant past. Now that Mayor used the Mindharp, which is a trap, it will kill everyone, the Sharu will return. As the governor melts and the Mindharp begins to shed radiation, the Millennium Falcon leaves. Rocker Gepta, who had only just arrived, tries to shoot at the Falcon and double fails because both Lando and the Sharu defenses took his ass out. And Lando gets away with the full cargo of the last ever life crystals harvested from Rafa, which he can sell for a big payday. Everybody wins, no loose ends, a perfect story, a perfect screenplay. The end.
Yeah. I bizarre.
Yeah.
Luckily, like, I mean, you can just teleport, I guess, through the whatever Sharu network. But like, if the bid is that all that plastic shit just goes away, does the planet like suck up all the Toka and bring them to safety?
It might be able to.
Or does everybody die? I'm like, fascinated.
I don't know, but knowing how close Ocean is to Sharu, I am so excited about that. I'm excited that there may be some more.
Oh, it 100% has to be a follow-up. Like, direct. To me, again, this seems like the first third of a book.
Like the Solo one wasn't quite like this. Like the Solo one
Not
was
even
just
remotely.
3 little Han Solo
it
joints.
only ends like the second one, where the second one's like, yoo-hoo, we're getting at it. Like, the boys got out of there.
This seems like this. It's just also because it's short. That this is going to be the first, bit of this. Actually, what should be just one book.
And you say like he had 9 weeks to write all of them?
I mean, I don't know that he had. He just did in
Wrote
9
them
weeks.
He wrote all 3 in 9 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know
They're
that
like,
it's like
you don't
he
need more
had.
time. He's like, nope.
I'm done. Here you go.
We just got to put out one of these, and then you can put it. And he's, no, I'm good.
No, I did it.
I actually don't know that. Maybe more than one of them came out on one day. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I believe that
It's maybe the angriest I've been
you shouldn't be
in
angry.
this version of or the most like riled up about something I've been in.
It's just because it's nonsensical. Like the book is so out there, and then at the end, it kind of falls apart in ways that seem unnecessary.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, and there was good stuff there. Like, there is interesting parts, and he like got Lando in the beginning, and it's like, I wish you had just stuck to more of that. And then there's a bunch of shit you put in that is like irrelevant and plot holy at best. Like, take it out.
July, October, December is how it went. 1983.
Wow.
So all after the movie, but July, October, December, and honestly, like I'm not as down on this book as you guys are because I'm like taking it out of context a little bit more. But like as a piece of pop culture, these Lando books are probably pretty fun.
I will say, like, the process of reading them was interesting and enjoyable in that I was like, where are we going next? It's only like putting it all together and being like, okay, this is like not a well constructed book, but it was probably a fun ride. I could not guess where it was going for a lot of it.
Yeah, I had a good time. I don't think they're the best Star Wars books that we've read, but they were my favorite.
Honestly, they're quick to get through, so it isn't like a big thing
not a
to
slog,
do.
yeah.
As an example, if you do the audio stuff for Star Wars, most books 21 hours.
Yeah.
This was a 5-hour book. The audio for this is 5 hours long.
I crushed this book. Like reading the actual pages of the book took me maybe like less than 4 hours.
Yeah,
I also wrote an outline this time, but like Usually it just takes me, for something this thick, this is like a sixth grader's book.
It honestly looks like you get the book fair in elementary school. Yeah.
Obviously, it's not for children. I think it's about for the same audience age as the Han Solo books, but it's still kind of, I don't know.
Pages-wise?
Maybe a little bit less sex in there.
Like, it's surprising because it's not a quarter of the length of, like, page numerically of the other books we've read, but, like, thinking in my head about how they space things for, like, comedic and whatever, it's like, oh, it is very, there's a lot of blank space on the page, let's say.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it's a quick read, unless you're me.
All right. Well, I think that's it for me. Next time, the Flame Wind of Ossian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's, hold on.
What?
I'm just checking my notes to see if there's anything else.
God, it's so interesting. Again, I'm not going to spoil
Oh,
stuff.
and there were even like little, what I loved in the beginning was like really good. Or at least like really competent and really like got the assignment for Lando, which was like, make it about gambling. He's a gamesman, do that. And they just did a bunch of like really interesting, subtle ways to show that he, like, the Falcon. Do you remember like he would hit his head on, like he was not at home in the Falcon. He would constantly like bump into things or forget things, which I thought was a cool way to just be like, you know, the way that Han is like the Millennium Falcon is like an extension of his like spirit. Lando is ill fit for this,
Which explains
was
why he
cool.
would so easily gamble with it.
Yeah, move on from it.
Like
yeah.
he doesn't, it's not part of him. And that's like this, the book isn't like a good book, but there's some things in it that are, they continue with, or at least pick up on Star Warsy aspects that I love. And then in some insane way, this is the start of like a lot of things that happen in Star Wars, which really all these books are, even the most terrible versions of these books. They're just pulling at strings, and I love that kind of stuff.
It's crazy how I never knew. Like, it's crazy how I came in the 90s, like 10 years later than all this stuff, and just absorbed it all and loved it and knew it encyclopedia like level, like I knew everything about it, and I had no idea.
And when we started talking about
the Mindharp.
When we started talking about things in New Canon Book Club, and we were like, where'd that come from? What was that thing? And it was always just kind of like, I knew it as a kid, and I don't know how I knew it. And it's very obvious that we just were too young to understand the absorption of like, oh no, that was already, some dude in 83 already wrote this.
As we saw, like, the Emperor, Vader getting burned, all that shit is just in the books, the novelizations. They
And,
weren't
like,
even
the
from
first-
outside sources or like
right
the
away.
thing.
Yeah, like very first time they could have been mentioned, they were mentioned. It's crazy. The fucking plot of the prequels is in the first.
It's the first Star Wars.
Yeah, you hear about it before the actual Episode 4 story, which is amazing.
It's wild that it's all there, and then they're like, all right, they crank it to 11, and I'm excited for that. I'm ready to get back to that.
Yeah.
Where I know almost every single one's going to be just a home run.
Yeah, and as
cannot wait to play Jedi Knight for the like 19th time.
hell yeah.
And love it still.
I'm excited to play that Dark Forces, like sort of remaster that they did.
They did it when?
Came out like a few months ago.
What?
Yeah,
Where?
everywhere.
Was it a remaster or did they just
GOG
patch
or-
it the way that?
No, it's a remaster. It's
Of OG Dark Forces.
Yeah, where were you guys? Yeah, are you guys crazy? Are you just pranking
a
me
couple
right now?
years ago, actually more years ago probably than we want to think. When I played Jedi Knight, they had just on Steam been like, okay, we actually made it so that you can run this.
Yeah.
Like we like optimized it so that you actually, as a regular person, can click this and it doesn't like open a tiny box and you have to do stuff.
Yeah,
So that was like Steam sort of like making it work.
that's not like a remaster though.
But
yeah.
here they were like, we upres
the graphics are better. It's like a real remaster.
Okay.
It's not a remake, but it's not a port. But it's all coming. Lando, one of my favorite Star Wars characters. As not solid as these books are in general, I would say that they are very true to Lando, the character. And if you like Lando, you should read them. And we're going to read the next one.
Lando is great because he gets to do similar things to Han. Like he's one of those like morally gray characters that gets to like have a little more fun because you can switch it. But instead of like being scrouchy and scruffy and whatever, he like likes high society. So he like It's fun to like see things through his perspective.
Big time. And these are bang, 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 1, 2, 3. So the next 3 things we're doing, it's all Lando. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Not like yeah.
Crazy. $30 on Steam.
Yeah, dude, it's like new. It's like
It has 5 stars.
Yeah, it just dropped.
Nostalgia.
It was on AGDQ. I watched a speed run of it.
Amazing.
It's amazing. Anyway, love you guys. Thank you for watching. Bing bong. Rebel on the syndrome. Rebel on the stips. See you guys next time.
Bye.
The Star Wars Old Canon Book Club is made possible by contributions from our listeners at patreon.com/SWOCBC. Thank you for your support. This month's Patreon Masters of the Force are Sovereign, Ian Baronade, Trevor Isom, Patrick Rowland, Matt Wars 56, Amy W, Jazz Owl, and Peacetime Mando. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with a discussion about our next selection, Lando Calrissian and the Flame Wind of Ocean, a novel by L. Neil Smith. This episode was edited by Alex Del Campo and Alex Fossiani. The theme song is Venus, the Bringer of Peace by Gustav Holst, performed by the U.S. Air Force Heritage of America Band. Original show art by Jackie Whistler. See you next time.
Thank you.